Right, this is going to be the next episode of Summoning Insight, the longest running, and I would say, in my personal opinion, the best League of Legends talk show from all over the years. In fact, the reason I know it has to be the best is because if you ever go into the comments, you will still see people who are actually clocking. Like, you know that thing, Monty, where if you're like being alcohol free and you're in Alcoholics Anonymous for like, 6 months, a year, you get like the chip and a special thing to show off. Like, this is like the dedication I have. We should actually, for real, because it'd be so on brand as well, issue those to our haters, bro. Because forget fans. Listen, I can be a fan of something for 20 years. It's the people who are haters. Remember, Monty, it's over 10 years now, bro. It's over 10 years. And some of them, my favorite ones are the ones who just stick to the same topic. They're consistent too. Like the ones who are still banging on about what I think about Rekkles. It wasn't even played in the West in like a year.
He's the substitute for T1 at Worlds now, though, Thorin. He's the official substitute player. Okay. So here's the real question for you, Thorin. Will they play Rekkles one game? So if they win, Rekkles can get a world championship skin.
Well, the joke on that last part is it assumes that they also would win Worlds, even with their real team, which right now, by the way, is absurdly unlikely. But even with that said, I will say, fair play to shitter fans. It turns out, sadly, that actually T1 was so cynical, they did literally put Rekkles in as the sub. The problem I have is this, Monty. I don't even believe, and this is actually, unfortunately, where if you're Rekkles or a Western fan, you shit out a lock. Bro, I swear, if this was like 6 years ago, Monty, they actually might just play him in like a group stage game. Imagine in the group stage, you had like a wild card team, like, Australian team. You actually might play him that one because you'd think we can't lose anyway, and we do in the group. The difference is, though, because it's Swiss system and you have no clue what randomized game you're getting next, they won't be playing him in the Swiss. I'm telling you guys, like, I am willing to like bet my reputation that Rekkles will not be played for even one game, unfortunately, because in this system,
because they're not in play-ins either.
Yeah,
they could have played it.
And also, they themselves just aren't elite enough to be able to do it right now. They can't fuck around and waste a tournament life when you only get 3 months. Because, like I say, you could end up on that 2-2 game at the end, and you could just draw like actually some top teams that you could just have to play way bored, like a best of 3 at the end, and then you're going to think, I wish I had back that BO1 I tried Rekkles on fucking Senna against someone. You're not going to want to do it, are you? So, and I'm just going to put this out there. Remember, guys, you know what the maddest part of all is? This is the funniest, but also the maddest part of him being a sub, Monty, is if he was actually an ADC sub, there's a logic as to when you could play him, because you could actually play him on the sort of picks that Gumayusi doesn't like. There's no universe you put him in over the carrier. It's not even plausible, not least because you're ready for the final pièce de résistance if you're a lunatic fan who thinks there's a chance. Here's why there's no chance. I've always thought the reason Gumayusi is actually overrated is because the reason he can get away with not playing sometimes 2 or 3 meta champions, Monty, is because he has the bot lane partner who can play infinite champions to make the 2v2 work. So there's no way you're putting Rekkles in there and having him fucking playing China or something. It's not even on the cards. But you know what? Fair play to T1. You're already torturing your own fans with the same lineup that you can win Worlds. Why not torture Rekkles fans at the same time? In many ways, Joe Marsh, me and you were actually aligned on that one. We both just want to see T1 fans suffer and believe that's what they deserve. We're both trying our very best to make them suffer at Worlds. So, you know what? Me and you finally, strange bedfellows politics makes for Monty.
I noticed Joe Marsh has conveniently returned to Twitter when T1 scraped themselves by in the regional gauntlet. Of course, not a word
when the head was getting bashed off the wall and all that jazz. Yeah, radio silence on that. I know it's weird, isn't it? Then again, maybe Monty, he was off doing something really appropriate, like I don't know, discussing oiling owner or I'll never get over that, bro. I still can't believe we live in a world, right, where if me or you say anything, they think vaguely unprofessional. We're like fucking pariahs forever. But Joe Marsh is like, yeah, maybe we should like oil up order. Like, what are you talking about? Bro, that's even all I'm going to say, Joe Marsh, is that's the fucking Diddy shit, mate. That's some, I don't know about that, mate. What are you doing over there in the industry? I know exactly. What sort of parties are you having with T1? Tell you what, I bet in a party like a T1 party, I'll bet it, Joe Marsh. I thought esports parties were just losers in Dota playing Mafia all that long. And then ironically, if you think of actually what they're seen end up being like with all the backbiting, being actually really poor at discerning who's lying to them. I always thought that was like its own joke built into it that wrote itself, but whatever, all good. By the way, actually, there's a little detail we could hop into the episode from Monty, which is, bro, a lot of people didn't notice this. I'm going to pull up the actual literal stats I can show you. But one of the points I made, I'm actually going to make my whole video about it, because I saw Richard made a video about the whole thing about Riot pretending they invented Twitch subs in 2024, 11 years after they took Twitch subs away. So obviously the point everyone can make, and we did make as well, is like, it is pretty absurd that you would give up all the revenue you could have made for 10 years, because there was basically no downside to having Twitch subs.
Yeah, of course. And apparently it was very easy to do, because all they had to do was like integrate, you know, some emotes and promote it.
You're just some annoying dickhead who just decided for whatever reason, lol, maybe we just won't have extra money. Watch, I'm doing this for no reason. Well, if that's bad enough, the actual angle I'm going to take, Monty, because it's a way better angle, especially now that League has no money in it, is, bro, the way I'm going to spin into this option is, think about how much money they also could have made, especially in League, bro, a way bigger game, if they'd have crowdfunded like TI all those years. Like, for real, Monty, that's hundreds of millions right there. In fact, let's be real. Since they had all of Korea and China, if you can get that from Dota, maybe they could have had 100 million prize pool for League. You know what I mean? Like for one tournament, bro. Remember, there was TIs that had 40 million prize pool, Monty. I believe there's a world where League of Legends could have broke all the records and pushed it out. So not only did you turn down probably the better part, like $500 million or something stupid, not to, because remember, for people who don't know, there's always been a detail idiots get wrong about TI, Monty. They go, Valve is so kind, they provide TI and let us fund it. No, it's even more cynical than that. They provide TI and then say, for every dollar you give me, I'll put 25 cents into the pool. So you pay them 3 times more and they go, I'll be keeping that, thank you. And then they're so magnanimous. It's like they're not. So anyway, Valve's made hundreds of millions, by the way, off TI. But if you don't know, they've now gone the other way. And this year was the year where the compendium thing just ran out of gas, Monty. For this year's prize pool, the total prize purse of Worlds was $2.6 million US. Now, to get back to that for TI, you have to go, last year's was 3 million. Then the year before that, 2022, 18 million, 2021, 40 million, 2019, 30 million.
Wow.
To get back to like the single digits, Monty, you have to go back to 2013. So actually for Dota, that gravy train's ran out. Now, by the way, it was dope. You got a solid, let me look, like from 2014, it was 10 million. And then it was 2022, it was 80 million.
Yeah, 10 years.
You got a solid like 8 or so years of like 10 plus mil every time, like way more than Worlds. But even that's run out. So I just think to myself, there's the genius, Monty. Not only did you turn down that free money, and remember, Monty, 3/4 of that free money could have just gone in your pocket. In fact, your cunts at Riot, you could have had 90% of the money. You could take whatever cut you want. By the way, as long as the original prize purse ends up going to like 4 or 5 million, that'd be enough already. Everyone would already be over. And like I said, they'd even stupidly say, you're so kind. But even worse, Monty, that might not even be possible now. It might not even be possible to do it. You might not even be able to do it today. That actual mortal might have died. We might have just wasted it all. Brilliant.
I have two thoughts. I have 2 thoughts on this. One of them is ammo for you, actually, for your video, which is to say, like, you know, I guess in Riot's case, they also realized this through the Ari promotion, like the Faker Ari skin promotion.
Really? You think that's why, right?
Well, no. I'm saying like they realized they could milk esports, right?
Sure,
like
right.
They could have been doing this every year as part of a League of Legends compendium, right? They could have featured professional players. They could have had skins for those professional players.
That's also the freest money ever left on the table. The idea, Monty, in like spring of 2013, there wasn't like a Blitzcrank Mad Life skin. It's just like, you just don't like money, bro. You actually hate money. There was never a Faker Z skin. Like, but you actually hate money. It's crazy. You guys don't even get the more, like, that's the most ridiculous fry. Like, please take my money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a Faker Z skin.
I would literally buy for sure that. Like, yeah, but you had to win Worlds. I would literally buy a Mad Life Blitzcrank skin now. Sure. If you want it, it'd be dope, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So they could have actually done some sort of promotion all these years with like compendium style thing, which could have tied into Hall of Legends now, obviously. So they're clearly realizing this, Thorin, which is why they're releasing these Hall of Legends skins.
So imagine being a caster. If you were a caster like Captain Flowers or Kobe, mate, you might have made an extra 100K off all those like sound fucking. Yeah, you did make loads. Yeah.
So for people who don't know, the biggest deal. So first off, Valve pays casters very well traditionally for being part of TI. But on top of that, one of the reasons why it was the event that all casters had to go to too is because their signatures and their voice packs that got put into the game could literally make them hundreds of thousands of dollars if they were among the more popular casters, which has never been an option.
So some, of course, everyone's going to want to hear you. Yeah, of course. OD Pixel, some, of course.
Yeah, so I mean that was a huge part of TI. Was not only did you get paid very well for being talent there, but on top of that, you got portions of the license fees that would go into that. So I mean, look, there were a lot of like missed opportunities here. Obviously, I mean we knew this, from the World Championship. There's been a lot going on, obviously, with the consolidation of the scene. But my other thought about this, Thorin, is like if Dota is having this kind of decline in player numbers, like, here's my thought, Thorin. I just think MOBAs aren't that popular anymore.
Oh, no.
I think MOBAs are dying. And I think, if we over the last couple of years, if we're seeing a pretty massive collapse in the funding of the international, which by the way, guys, isn't purely an esports play because the compendium gives you a bunch of stuff. So people who don't care about esports also buy the compendium because it's like a battle pass where you earn different cosmetics, right? Yes. And so even if you're not interested in esports, you could be just kind of accidentally funding the prize pool for the international. But I think this just, it's as we've been talking about, like you see the consolidation in League of Legends. It's just less obvious. And this was always the danger with doing the crowdfunding for the international is that the optics of it when it goes down in number are really bad, right? It creates a panic. So I can understand in some way why Riot wouldn't want to be as transparent as Valve has about, if they were to do something like this. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that they scared them off. But I would look at these numbers and I would say, surely like League of Legends can't be going up in player base as a MOBA while we are seeing the decline this severely from like 40 million at its peak to 2.5 million now. That can't actually be good for League of Legends. And maybe the drop off isn't that severe, but I do think we know that over time, the player base of MOBAs continues to get smaller and smaller, which is why Riot is now drawing back on the promises that they made. Now they're saying, oh, well, we used to say 2025 is going to be the year that changes everything for League of Legends. That wasn't true. That was an overstatement, right? I do believe that they were planning on releasing a new engine. And that project probably has been shelved, is my take on it. And that means that they're just going to they're not going to kill League of Legends, but they are just going to like let it slowly peter out over time.
By the way, a couple of other things. One is that's actually the reason why I think, because we'll do is like a general industry comment. It's why I think people are going to fall into the exact same trap with Deadlock, the new Valve MOBA attack FPS that they fell into with games like Fortnite and PUBG, Monty. And here's the trouble. Here's the flaw they're going to fall into. I think it will be a huge game player base, and everyone will have loads of fun playing it. And it'll be really casual fun. And I think it will be a nightmare like Overwatch to show for observers and fucking the farming will be insane to try and follow. And if people didn't like Overwatch fights, Monty, oh boy, are they going to hate a Smite style fucking team fight in a MOBA with the attack FPS, bro. People can't even follow what's happening in a Valorant fight. Never mind like an actual. So I think unfortunately it's going to be really hard to actually make us an esport. That's why I gave the example of Fortnite, etc., because they never really nailed that as like a huge esport. It always was just a corollary to the casual game, right?
What I said about Overwatch is that Overwatch started as an FPS and then slowly over time, especially with the GOATS meta, turned into the hardest to watch MOBA in the world. Yeah. And like, I have a feeling when we look at Deadlock and the necessity of having like third-party aerial cams, like you're basically just going to be observing the worst kind of Overwatch observing, right? Because Overwatch wasn't, I thought Overwatch was pretty viewable in like the early days when I was doing Apex, but by the time we got into season 2 of the Overwatch League, it was very hard to watch.
The reason why is even obvious, Monty, because in the beginning, like you say, it was more of attack FPS. So in the beginning, the reason I could enjoy it is I just watched the DPS player. I watched the Widowmaker sniper. I know that. I watched the fucking player with the pistols like Tracer like Prophet. Or occasionally you have the rare, the Jojopyun one that's just a weird guy you watch. But aside from that, you just watch the DPS, didn't you? I mean, everyone knows the joke is that Pine guy wasn't really an all-time great player. He just was really good at popping off with McCree, which if you're a casual, that's perfect, isn't it? That's what you want to see. Everyone can understand the guy with a fucking 6-shooter shooting shooting everyone in the head. It's brilliant in it. But I agree. Once it got to not just that, but the other game modes, it could be quite difficult to sort of know, like, am I supposed to be enjoying this guy getting this kill, or is this kill like not actually that important to the overall thing? Like, is someone good spawning it? You know, it had like it wasn't as intuitive to follow, I thought.
You know, I was laughing because you talked about McCree, and obviously, like, they changed his name to Cassidy, which has to be one of the most nonsense, like.
Well, do you remember the reason? Because it was the stupidest reason ever, Monty.
I know. So what happened was, Jesse McCree was a developer at Blizzard, and he was, again, he did not do anything. Let's be clear about this.
Yes.
He happened to be present in a group chat saying nothing that was about that whole Cosby suite thing.
Yep.
And so the logic of
even was actually before Bill Cosby did the sexual assault to Sarah allegedly. So even that wasn't actually as bad as it. It's just they were saying off-color things in the chat. Yes.
Yeah, and the Cosby suite was named after the carpet, which was supposed to look like Bill Cosby's sweaters, guys. So it was before the Cosby trial or any of this stuff.
It's just beautiful detail through history.
It was, it was unfortunate timing. Not to say that, you know, what they were talking about there wasn't unprofessional and bad, because it was. But anyway, he didn't say anything. There was never any evidence that this guy actually said anything. So this character was named after this Blizzard developer. So they changed his name, of course, because of this scandal. But here's the logic that it goes to. So remember, this guy literally did nothing besides be in a group chat, and they changed his name to Cassidy. I can only presume after Butch Cassidy, a real life murderous outlaw.
It's so mental, I know.
So a guy who did nothing wrong had to have his name changed to a character who is a you know, actually committed real heinous crimes in reality. It is fucking wild that is the logic that they used.
And also, I'd just say this, like, what that actually should have taught you, even though, by the way, he didn't do anything, is if you look at what the behavior of the people who worked on the dev teams at Riot Games and Blizzard displayed to us, I would just say, just to be safe, if you don't ever want a character associated with sexual assault or misogyny, just don't name it after any of your programmers. Crazy idea, just pick a unique name for a fictional character, and then you can't get into trouble, can you? Like, let's just be smart. Let's have some guidelines out there. You know, I'd like to go the other way, Monty. You could say, why doesn't everyone just not commit sexual assault or harassment if they work on game dev? But you have to understand, Monty, that's an out of the box sort of thought for our industry, mate. So we can't police that. So can at least change the names of the characters? You know, just don't plant the seed.
Yeah, murders are allowed. You know, people who are in group chats where other people say things, heinous crime. Anyway, back to Deadlock for a second. I do think that there's probably a way that Deadlock could be popular. Like, I think we're seeing it. We're obviously, with the rise of co-streaming, seeing a transition in the way that people want to watch these games. And one way that Overwatch really was ahead of the curve was if you had that Twitch subscription, you could like view from, you know, Twitch built that entire suite where you could view from any player's perspective if you were subscribed to the Overwatch League channel.
Like ProView,
yeah, like ProView. But I think for a game like Deadlock that could actually work, especially if you had co-streamers hopping on and like explaining that character's perspective, because people watch esports a lot of the time to get better at the games. And so to have dedicated streams to popular players where you're analyzing just from their perspective, there may be a way to do this. It just won't be like traditional esports casting, as it were, right?
You may have, you'll be interested in this, just as a media person, Monty, this will interest you, because I know MMA is not your thing, but the craziest example, again, of money just left on the table I have seen in years, bro, and anyone who knows what I'm talking about now is going to instantly get the point I'm going to make, is actually Joe Rogan, mate. Because you know Joe Rogan is simultaneously the biggest podcaster in the world, but also still like a commentator with the UFC.
Right.
The whole time he's been in the UFC, Monty, they've allowed him to do a feature where he does a podcast, which is called like Fight Companion, where what he does is they're not usually allowed to show it all on the screen, but like they sort of like off screen watch the fights, and then they get like a group of mates together, like, you know, like you would like. Essentially, the joke is, Monty, since already over the years they've moved on from Joe Rogan. He's not the main commentator. He does like the odd event now, and clearly, by the way, in his own life, I mean, he just doesn't want to do every UFC. There's a million UFCs, right? The dumbest thing is they haven't figured out he's basically co-streaming. It could be the biggest co-streamer in the world if they just gave him the co-streaming rights. Like, that's the dumbest thing of all, Monty. If they were actually smart, there'd be two ways you could watch. One would be you'd pay for the normal pass, and then two would be either as a feature within the pass or you pay separately. You could go through Joe Rogan, because essentially it's the same concept you're describing. I actually think if you're a casual who's just a Joe Rogan fan, you want Joe Rogan to talk you through the fight. You don't really want to watch the normal fight of the sport. You want to be part of the group where It's almost like having the boys round for some bevies. And so what's mad is that's just another example of where like this is how far behind UFC is, Monty. Even the fucking NFL essentially figured out the core stream and got Peyton Manning to do it. They've even figured out the core cast. Although, by the way, they do the worst boomer version where he actually has a delay on talking to the guests, which is like, Peyton, we had this figured out with Roger Wilcourt in 2001. There was no delay on that, bro. How are you having a delay in 2024? Wow. So the guests like signal jamming, like, oh, sorry, Peyton, and it does it. But even they figured out, whereas UFC still hasn't figured out the core stream, bro. Because actually, by the way, core streaming is just the future. And it makes perfect sense. If you're just a pleb, aside from the really professional guys, the Chris Collinsworths of the world, aside from that, the other person you would want to watch it is with your favorite personality, of course. It just makes that, it actually is kind of genius. It's amazing no one figured this out years ago, because we already had the streamers in League. We already had streamers in Start. We never just figured out to put the streamers with the game. We just never figured it out somehow. Because that is esports' biggest innovation in the last 5 years, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. The Manning cast also, I wish it didn't get dragged down by a bunch of the celebrities, like, pushing their latest film, because I think a lot of the celebrity call-ins
any of the pro players are fine. Have any coach
or Belichick is very amusing.
It's when they'll be watching a real game, like an actual tense game, bro. We're on like third down, and then it's like I have to hear Kevin Hart explain why him and the Rock's. It's like, bro, one, I don't even believe you, Peyton Manning, are watching this. And two, please, can we just shut this guy up and watch the game? What are we doing?
I mean, my favorite part is Peyton Manning is just ignoring them the whole time and just like intensely watching the game. I'm like, I actually do want to hear his thoughts right now, but I can't.
Oh, mate, I actually have a quick story for you, actually, just because it's one that I saw the other day, where cause also, this is why I love Peyton Manning too. You know, with his production company, he's just like hired Bill Belichick and they're just doing loads of content now, right? As a result, cause Belichick doesn't give a fuck anymore because he's not going to get a gig. I mean, he was trying to get in with the Falcons, but spoiler, there's a reason he gave the Falcons that dirty work if you watched that Manning cast the other day.
That was so funny.
Yeah, it was just like what I would do. It's just like you just fuck on the people that fucked you and it wouldn't work. You know, why not? That's why I knew being Belichick were kindred spirits. But anyway, as a result, he's also revealing loads of mad details about his career. There's a mad story I saw the other day from Devin McCourty, that defensive player that played for the Patriots. Bro, this story is so bonkers, Monty, right? Belichick told him, this is the level this guy was on. He goes, when you're playing the game, understand that the wind report for that day means that on the sidelines, the wind's going to spin like counterclockwise instead of clockwise. So the ball will look like it's going to go further up, but it'll actually fall further back. And Devin McCourty even says he thought, like, the fuck's he talking about? And then in the game, and they show you this play, exactly that happens, buddy. On the right sideline, someone throws the ball, and you can tell the wide receiver thinks it's coming in long over the top, like over the shoulder. And Devin McCourty remembers and just looks back and catches it right behind because the wind. Bro, what is Belichick actually a wizard? Like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, that's why, by the way, I look down on Tom Brady stands so much, Monty. They look at Tom Brady and go, he's the GOAT, the greatest individual figure ever in the NFL. And I'm like, the guy you're talking about stood next to him, you moron. He stood right there. He's literally like 2 meters. You're right, but it's the wrong guy. You picked the wrong guy. It's that one there.
You know, if he really was a wind wizard, it would also explain Deflategate very conviently.
You know, it's the power of wind. Exactly. The power of air.
Power of air.
It's all about that. Exactly. Yes. By the way, I also saw, are you ready, Monty? Get ready with some of the Insight bingo, because you know how there's certain topics that, because they never change, you yourself get fatigued from talking about them. So like classically, I don't do those videos very often now, Monty, where I like wreck people for all the all-pro votes, because I realized it's just going to be this every split. Like, they're never going to change. They're going to do all the same. Like, a Greek guy is going to vote for the Greek player. A Spanish guy is going to vote for the Mexican. You know, they're going to do all the obvious, like, biases, right? So I don't bother. So similar one. And get ready. Like, drum roll. You aren't going to believe this, guys. Totally breaking news. Never happened before. But you know, World Championship, League of Legends. You know, the best region's been the LPL for about 5 years. Still fuck all LPL casters, right? That's all. That's not least because you know the reason why it's even worse now, though, Monty. It's not even the normal one now. Now it's not that, like, we don't have the LPL casters. And by the way, everyone in the chat, fucking miss me, you clown, if you're so dumb you say Dagda, etc., or hysterics. They make a point for me, not for you. Because the only reason they're hired is because they don't do the LPL LPL, you cretin. It's because they moved to LEC. So you've just made a point for me. And by the way, I don't give a monkeys if Hysteric watched the LPL every game 2 years ago. He ain't the LPL caster now. But anyway, the more important thing is this. The other reason why they won't let the LPL casters do it now, Monty, is because the LPL is now the bane pit for everyone they kick out of LEC. Yes. So now, of course, they're not letting those guys do World. So it's actually even worse now, bro. Like now we just have fuck all people who watch the LPL. It's monstrous.
Well, here's the thing. So I complained about this. I obviously complained about this. You know, when like basically like when MSI was in China and they just didn't invite any of the LPL casters. So I was like, it's literally in China. But okay. So they had to fly people over there. They got to choose who they flew, right? Here's the wild thing, Thorin. There are a bunch of LPL casters, Trouble, Nymera, Jamada, that are all in Europe. By the way, guys, some of them live in Berlin. And if you guys didn't know, play-ins and Swiss are both happening in Berlin. Okay, so they literally live in the same city.
Imagine if the final, because it actually could be, imagine if the final is like top esports against BLG, and you're Nymera, you're like, oh, that's the most ridiculous on the outside looking in. I mean, you're even in the, like, could be even be in like this, well, it's actually in the O2 or whatever. But like for some matches,
Jamada lives in the UK.
Right? You're just actually like, you could even be vaguely close, but it's like you're just not allowed to participate. At that point, you're almost banned from the event at that point. Like, what even is that? That is so crazy, the FOMO you'll feel at that point. I feel bad for those guys. I do.
But like, if it is an all LPL final, like Jamada lives in the UK, right? Sure. And by the way, my personal opinion is that these guys are some of the best casters really good, now. Like I think Nymera, Trouble, and Jamada are all really good at the moment. So it's not like they don't have talent, but to not even have one of these people on the desk, especially when you would have to fly them for shorter distances or not at all. You know, you may not even have to pay for hotel rooms, at least for the Berlin leg of the trip, is just so outrageous that we are just denied even having an expert on the desk about LPL who has actually watched all of the LPL games that are taking place. And on top of that, Thorin, there are also people like Nymera who followed the Japanese scene, right? So if he was in play-ins, he can also talk about the SoftBank Hawks, right? Who are going to be playing in the play-in stage. So it is actually baffling to me why they have continued to basically sideline these people. And as to your point about it being Bane's pit, I mean, yeah, it just feels like when they're done with you on LEC and you're European, you just get tossed into the LPL. And I guess at least it's work, but it's pretty weird that they have sidelined people who I think are very good casters, who used to do a lot of guest appearances and kind of given them less and less work over time. And remember, they also pulled back on the LPL broadcast this year. They don't do all of the broadcasts like they did last year. When it was in crisis and basically Tencent, who was running it before, just said, we're stopping this. And Riot, to their credit, did scramble and like get an English broadcast together. And they have been running it out of the control room in Dublin, as I understand. You know, they did do something, which I appreciate, because you guys will remember that like Dom said he was going to fund like the English language like stream if it didn't exist, and you know, all this other stuff. But they did pull it together, but it's not every day. There's still a couple days every week where it's like co-streams only basically and no official English language broadcast, which is better than nothing. And I'm glad something exists, but it is, you know, by tossing all these people in there together, there aren't as many LPL broadcasts to work on, right? And you don't have LEC days or either to make up for it. So I think it probably just feels really bad if you are a caster who's just been kind of consigned over to the LPL, and you can't, you know, your one hope basically is that you would be able to potentially work an international event, at least in the early stages, because you have this kind of niche expertise. But Riot doesn't give a fuck about that. Like, they're just going to invite all of the LCS and LEC casters, and that's it. Even though it's not like LCS is doing massive viewership, and we only get 2 LCK guys as well, right? It's only ever Atlas and Chronicler that are, you know, that are able to work these events. So this is why I said earlier, like, I think all of these people should be trying to work the Esports World Cup, because it's the only way that you can actually gain international exposure at this point in time. Sure, I don't agree with sports washing, and we obviously said a lot of words about Saudi Arabia, but at the same time, like, you will never get an opportunity otherwise to do an international event. Because clearly at this point in time, Riot has no interest in promoting you. So the only way to grow yourself to a big enough place to get into Worlds or MSI is to do events like that, in my opinion, because there's no other path. Riot has shut all of the doors.
You referenced this in the past when you talked about the fact that there literally even used to be Riot casters. And I'm not talking like low level. I'm talking the biggest ones in the world who used to just be working MSI Worlds for free. It was just part of their contract. Like they were getting less money than me and you, and they were working those events for nothing. Even though, by the way, as you said about TI, I heard there was years where people were making like 20K from TI, mate. Like that was like big time money because it was weeks and weeks of matches, and you had two streams and all the casters in the world there, etc. So the reason why it's so egregious as well, Monty, is this isn't just like punishing smaller casters who are really good. Like, as you said, if anything, Nymera went above and beyond. He fucking co-streamed the games that weren't even being shown on the real stream. So, by the way, you know that thing of like, well, I'm sure the guy who's studying watched it. Yeah, you had to watch Nymera's stream then, you dickhead. There wasn't even another stream except that. So, best case scenario, he still isn't Nymera, who was actually casting that game. He was just watching that game, taking notes. But it's worse than that, because I actually think I know another cynical reason Riot does this. Because that's another reason, Monty, as to why you don't need to get paid a top esports day rate to work Worlds, even if you're Corby. Bro, we're already giving you the perk as a caster of the LCS. You get to be on Worlds, and you know what? You get to do the final. Bro, they treat doing the final, which, by the way, if you're just the best caster in the world, should be an automatic expectation. They treat it like a gold watch after you've like served the company for many years. Like that, the way they do that instead of just paying these guys money is gross. And then also, like I say, it's another reason, let's be real, Monty. They don't ever want it to. This is why I did that tweet where I did the Kanye West. I just said Riot Global doesn't care about the LPL and never has. If they ever cared about the LPL and LCK, they would actually want the opposite, Monty. They would want the best casters in the world to go to the LCK. They would want Captain Flowers and fucking Dracos to be casting LCK. So it's like the biggest fucking viewed league in the world. LPL, you'd want it to be like fucking pick another Corby and whatever, Vedius or something. You'd want like some combo everyone would want to shoot into, even casuals. But instead, you actually want the opposite. You want to incentivize these fuckers via this system to stay in the shitty LCS that has fuck all. I was even making this point on my stream today. Do you want to know something that is a bomber, Monty? You know that thing where we're all like, wow, can you believe Impact's the MVP after all these years? I just showed on my stream, who the fuck plays top lane in LCS? Essentially, he won that by being better than Bwipo, and everyone else was like Sniper, for fuck's sake, and licking it. Like, what are we talking about? Like, there's nobody left. That's what, but because Corby sits there and goes, haha, remember CLG and TSM? Oh shit, my bad. Neither of those teams in the league and none of those players play anymore. Hey guys, we've got a great game coming up of IMT against Shopify Rebellion. He has to do that in the hopes that he can then do Worlds. Like, that's an incentive now, bro. To that, he has to do a shitty region so he can then do Worlds in MSI too. Instead of, I don't know, crazy idea for an esport, Monty. How about do the best region and then do the best tournament? It's mental, innit? It's actually mental, bro.
Well, especially because, LCS doesn't have the viewership that LCK has anymore. Not. So there's not even the viewership angle in English to be going off of. Because even if I actually don't even think it peaks higher on English streams, but there's just so many more games that you get so many more reps. What they did 7 best of 3s per team this split, right? There were 18 best of 3s per team, more than double, right, in the LCK. So the number of broadcast days, number of viewed hours is just way higher, even just in English on LCK. So it's not even like, what's the prestige in working LCS anymore? And I do agree. I mean, this system is very cynically designed, and the way it's designed, Thorin, is to trap people. So what happens is, if you are a major caster, the way they trap you is they don't give you any raises really at any point in time. They have a monopoly, so they just set the price for your rates. They don't give you more money for internationals, but because you have developed a lifestyle in either Germany or California that is dependent on this income, and they know you have no other options, because look at what happened, guys. I mean, Cadrill's done very well, but he built up his co-stream while being a caster. Now, you'll notice that they don't appear to give other casters co-streaming rights. Like, I don't see the other casters co-streaming other leagues, or even their own league on their days off, which I think is very weird. Why was Cadrill given this like unique benefit? Maybe he wasn't, and maybe everybody else is just fucking lazy. I don't know. But they look at people like Dash, who haven't been able to like break into any kind of success after they left the league. And so they keep these people scared. And it's like, well, guys, we're going to offer you just enough to like keep you around, but not enough to actually have a career. And there is no career development for you. And if you're a smaller caster, they basically just keep you in a perpetual cycle of barely scraping by with enough money to survive. And like, baiting you with the hope that someday they will, bring you to maybe an international event to talk about your niche expertise, but that's not going to happen either. So, I mean, it really is a cruel system that they are maintaining right now, but everybody is honestly too scared to leave because they have a very narrow skill set and what are you going to do after 10 years if you have no other you've developed no other income streams. You're totally dependent on casting LCS. You haven't built up your own brand. You don't have any other skills that you really have worked on over the years. Like, I think it's probably really daunting, but that's just going to continue until the end of time, basically.
I've got a really fucked up, cynical, but are you ready? You actually know the reason why. I think I told you about this. Essentially, there was a piece of content, Monty, that was supposed to appear with someone who knows exactly about this topic. And for whatever reason, it will never appear. And I'll never say who it was unless they fuck with me publicly, essentially. So basically, I actually know because this story was told by this individual, Monty. It's even worse because this is where I always have to remind myself. I have to basically, sometimes I have an inner Monty as well. I have that naive guy who started in esports and just wants it to be big and can't everyone just share and can't we all just get along and make a great scene? I have that guy too. It's just that the outer Thorin, which criticizes you and keeps you balanced, also internally battles that inner wolf Monty and beats him down and makes sure he stays in. So when the inner Monty in me goes, what the fuck? I assumed with Valorant, they'd just make that an option, Monty. Like, you can cast both games, so then you can do more events and you can dip in and out. And if you choose you're not interested in League, you move to that. No. Sorry, inner Monty. You are naive again. You are thinking the best of people. You are imagining that there's a great world where we can all share. Whereas remember, Sauron never shares power. So do you want to know the craziest detail, guys? Not only have I heard it's inferred, actually, what did Dash in was that he was doing both games. He was doing Valorant and League, and he was trying to play it to get the most money. But even better, I've heard internally, Riot doesn't want anyone doing both games because there's such cynical, heartless cunts, Monty. They can't even let you have the leverage that you do two of their games. That's how bad these people are. So as a result, you notice how, Monty, at the beginning of Valorant, they had a whole bunch of cross-promote. They had Ender doing both. They had a few people, they had some of the people from Korea, I think, doing one or two. Right now, it's almost entirely just like League people and Valorant people, and the twain never shall meet, as they say. Like, they've actually even made it. So the worst thing is now, think of this, Monty. Say you did put in that 10 plus years on the LCS, you grinded in the Riot salt mines, and at the end, when League dies, or you don't even get to come on the Valorant lifeboat, mate. We're all leaving without you. Yep. See, beep, beep, dude, see ya. You're on the desert island, fucker. Enjoy that, Robinson Crusoe. And you're just fucking left behind. That's so, bro, these guys are actually like a malevolent force. Even the people that should be their minions and servants and friends, they even fuck those people, bro. It's why I'm not even joking. In a weird way, I actually get a sort of perverse pleasure, Monty, out of that story, where that Riot guy backchanneled to me, that if I just didn't criticize him, I could like work worlds. Because it's actually the ultimate dick slap in the face of all the people who did serve them. They went to an actual enemy of Riot, like a fucking card-carrying hater of Riot, and we're like, look, you don't even have to say anything nice. If you just don't criticize them for 2 years, you can have what at the beginning of this episode, guys, we just explained all those other guys are working decades for. Like, there's people now doing 5 years. Like, I hope I get onto a Worlds. I could have just not said fuck Riot and been on a Worlds. That's how shitty a company Riot is. They're that bad, guys. I love it.
I mean, it's just... The incentives are just so crazy at this point in time because you just don't get the bonus for doing the international events. Like, you literally just don't make more money than you would from your day of casting LCS for casting the fucking World Finals in the O2 Arena. And like, at this point in time, Thorin, maybe I'm just built differently than these guys. Like, I get tired of doing the same thing. And, I've had conversations with other casters who have left League of Legends about this as well. But it's like, as soon as you kind of reach, the world final status, it's like, well, what is there to do now? You know what I mean? And so a lot of people who were ambitious have left, favorite casters you guys have left and like done other things because you sit there and you're like, well, what do I do? So there's no financial incentive and there's no real career progression or motivation incentive, especially if you've been doing this for as long as some of these guys have. Like, the rush wears off, right? You need something new, or at least I do. And so I think it's very telling, like, that, Riot knows that a lot of these people have like run out of options, honestly. And there's nowhere for them to go because esports has collapsed across the board, and it's shit. Like, it's shit. And I do feel bad for these people, but also these people have sometimes it's hard to feel bad for them because they've done nothing to help
Oh,
themselves.
of
They didn't
course.
unionize. They didn't actually develop other skills. They didn't develop personal brands. They didn't develop their streams. They didn't try co-streaming. They don't have content. Some of them are trying now, but it's like you wasted 10 years of not doing shit. And now you got nothing. Anyway.
No, I know what you mean. I agree.
LPL casters should be at Worlds. Like, I don't even, even if you guys don't like the LPL casters as much, and by the way, the LPL casters are really good.
Yeah.
A lot of them are really good guys.
The LPL casters, ironically, because they are LEC, they would be LEC casters if they could. They're better than the LEC casters. The LEC's all right, but the LPL casters are really good. I think Nightmare in trouble like this shit, mate. I love them.
Yep. Yeah. Look, they've got really good casters over there. I was
a big fan of that lyric guy anyway, mate. I always thought he was the sleeper in League anyway. He's always been, like, he has a great voice too.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, I just think it's outrageous because you as fans and all of us are getting denied a lot of the stories. And like, just because you watch the big games, I've said this many times before, you guys probably know this, just because you watch the games, it's different than actually casting because it sticks in your memory more. You have to articulate the points. It really is better. This is why you guys see me doing my bangers only, is because while I'm prepping, I find I retain the information better if I'm doing active analysis and explaining it to people. So that's why I do, the important games on my stream, because passively viewing, you get distracted, or like I get an email, and I respond to it and I come back, I forget what was going on. I'm thinking to myself, but it's not quite as good as actually putting those thoughts into words. Honestly, my Twitch chat is also very helpful, and we talk about things that I missed or, other ideas that people have, and sometimes they're really good. So that interaction is really nice as well. But, it's different to just passively view these games versus being active. And even if you are somebody who watches the big games, there might be some sort of niche pick or niche strategy that comes out between a good team and a bad team that you just don't know about because you didn't watch the shit game. And so if you're not watching literally everything, you're just not going to have the flavor and texture of that team and know all of the, the little bits of trivia that I think, in my opinion, really make that's the career of being a caster, is knowing this stuff and like being able to provide the fun details. And so in my opinion, it just makes for a much more bland product when you have people who are not, even if they watch some of the games, they're definitely not watching all the LPL games, guys. They're not.
By the way, I also think you could even tie this into the early discussion about a compendium. Imagine if that's a thing you could do. If you crowdfunded a compendium in League, maybe the fan, you get to place a vote, which talent do you want? You get to pick a talent that's like a small, I know they're not smaller regions, but to idiots at Riot Global, they are not a major region. So you pick one of those people and add them in or something. That would be cool.
Yeah. For sure, especially for play-ins, right? And we've had some of those people on our, Worlds preview episodes before who are very articulate, very good. I think, people who could...
If it wasn't for the fact I do like Cadril, so I try not, when I actually like people, I try not to snipe and be too petty, but it's always there. So there was part of me thought about doing the tweet, but I thought this might just sound like I'm being shitty to him, but I'm actually reckon sort of League in general. The response, Monty, that Cadril the other day did a video on his channel where he got a bunch of smaller people like Nightmare, etc., to do like SoftBank Hawks, like break down what they're
all the people who had been on our shows before.
I wanted to just say, I guess Cadrill's taken a page out of Riot's book where they invented Twitch subs in 2024 by inventing the idea of having talent from smaller regions come onto a larger person's platform and explain to casual fans in the West what they can expect from smaller region wildcard teams. If only I could go back in time 10 years and do that on someone Insight. I thought that could have been a banger tweet. But I thought, what? I actually like Cadrill. So that is a good feature. It is a good initiative.
Look, I like that Cadril is platforming these people as well. But I did think it was funny that it was like a lot of the people that we've had on our shows in the past, which is good for them. I mean, they deserve it. So I just thought I had a chuckle. But good for them. Let's talk about some other stuff that's been going on, Thorin. Because we haven't talked. You made a video about the like Jojopyun exit from Cloud9. I think we probably have some thoughts on this. You check out the longer video there. We also have the rumors, which, by the way, guys, we will address on an episode of the Four Horsemen in the coming days about the LCS exits. And actually, Riot released some new information about the Americas League, which means, by the way, that the team participation agreements are completed, I would assume. And that means that two teams have been basically kicked out of the LCS at this point in time, because I don't think they would release these public details otherwise. Now there is going to be an entire other Four Horsemen show on that, so stay tuned to this channel. We'll get into more details. But and Berserker also leaving Cloud9 allegedly, so a lot of like roster rumors around the super team that are happening right now. But what was your take on like the JoJo 43 times being late and being kicked out of C9 allegedly?
I mean, like I say, I did do a video that's really fucking long. I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes long or something. It's one of the ones I actually pioneered doing like live on my stream to see if I could do it without it like annoying me too much that I'm doing it live and all that jazz. I got through it all. It was pretty good. The only problem was I had a bit of a cold. So it wasn't like my best video, but it was still pretty good. Like I would say the main thoughts I have to start with go like this, right? The 43, there's two angles to the 43 times late. So first of all, right, bearing in mind, it's not even that he's just late that many times. That's when they started counting, right? First of all, there is the obvious angle that people who wanted to sort of defend Jojopyun did, which is if you're Cloud9, I'm sorry, it is nonsense. Like, as soon as you start counting, you're not waiting and going, well, it's 43. You know when it's even 10. When it's 10, you'd have sat him down and went, look, if this is really something I'm going to have to fire you for, 10's unacceptable. Definitely better not get to 20. You know what, you do that. So waiting, counting, and then him getting to 43 sounds like you counted and went, wait a minute. If I actually can get him on enough of these infractions, I'm pretty sure I can just do him. And then you've essentially waited, like that's a trap you laid and you waited. And then by the way, because even the 43 is like it's just such an egregious number. Even 10 would be not good. So 43 just sounds like, well, you just late every day. You know what I mean? It sounds like that. And then secondly, if you go on the other side, you can obviously say, which people tried to argue against, I don't care what Jojopyun's excuse is. And by the way, I've got a little info we can get into I didn't have for my video about like IBS, etc. But even if it's something where he has a reason, I'm sorry, 43 times late is unacceptable. Like, I made this point there, bro. Like, do you know, like, you remember this, Monty? When you were a boy in like the 90s, bro, even like the best NFL players only used to get like, $1 million or something, bro? Like, this guy's getting 750,000 to play shitty League of Legends as like what? The 700th best player in the world. Bro, I said it in my video. You know what you do if you're Jojopyun? You make Jack impossible for him to catch you like that. You go, oh, is he going to couch it like that? You know what? I'm going to be 1 minute early every scrim. And then I get the 750k and he can't say shit about me. You played right into his hands, Jojo. Even if he was setting you up, you're a moron. You had a gig where you're a 19-year-old kid getting 750k a year and you couldn't even just turn, if it said 9 o'clock, you turned up at 9:05. You know what? I don't have that much sympathy for you on that one, you know, even though there's the whole IBS thing we can shade into in a minute if you want. What do you think on this opening game?
Well, so first off, JoJo's never going to make that money again, ever.
Oh, no.
In his entire life.
Money's done.
So he really sucked that up.
It's over.
And yes, I do think that, you know, there have been implications from other pro players and people formerly on EG. Like there's obviously a lot swirling around this and a lot of assumptions, which we can unpack. But, you know, at the end of the day, like the 43 number, and here's the truth, guys. If they go to Worlds, if they win LCS, all of that just gets thrown out, right? It doesn't matter.
Yes.
You know, that's the thing is like if you are a professional athlete, you can be as much of an asshole as you want as long as you win games. Like that's just how the world works.
That even that logic though is being used by even people like my mate LS in a way that I think's a bit disingenuous because they're using it almost like a gotcha. Like, but if you really cared, if you'd have gone to Worlds, you wouldn't have kicked him out. It's like, well, yeah, because that was our actual goal. Like, what? What? That's it. Monty, think about what a mad statement this would be. Oh, so I'll give you the actual example because I gave it in my video. Oh, you know Antonio Brown? Well, in theory, you should do what Belichick did. And even though he scored that touchdown that first game, you should instantly bench him because he's a lunatic, right? But I'll tell you what, if you're on the box and you really want to win that ring and he wins you the ring, at the end, it's justified that you kept him playing even though he was a bit of a nutter, right? So either way you do it, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So I don't even get that angle, bro. Like, what you're saying is if what I hired you to do, you actually had done, then I wouldn't have fired you over something minor. But if you didn't do what I hired you to do, then I might also fire you over something minor. I don't see that as a contradiction, mate. Well, I think that seems quite consistent to me, actually.
You know, Dennis Rodman was a nut job on the Bulls. You know what I mean? Like he would literally not show up for games because he was drinking in Vegas and like would just like fucking disappear for weeks, right? Did it matter? No, because they won titles, right?
Yes.
Like, you just have to understand that that's who this guy was. But, you know, you can justify it as long as you continue winning. And also, look, I like LS, but I really don't think that he has an axe to grind with Cloud9 clearly, and so I think there's like huge motivation for him to spin this in a certain way.
Because I've never done a video on the LS thing, mainly because basically neither party wants that info to come out, guys.
Yeah.
Like neither Cloud9 nor LS wants.
Look, it doesn't look good for anybody. The truth,
it's bad for everyone. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and
the truth behind that situation makes everybody look bad. And it's
by the way, I want to make that clear. It's not just LS though. I'm not saying only LS did some shit. He'd get exposed. They'd all get exposed, so no one wants that info out there. So I've never addressed this, but I will say here's the problem with that topic. I agree with your take. LS is clearly motivated to have to want to call out what he thinks is Cloud9 corruption or not telling the truth or being disingenuous, right? But the problem I have is this. I think they were way more disingenuous to LS than they were to Jojo. I think the Jojo one's even pretty legit. In fact, actually, when you get into some of the things you've alluded to, like the fact that there isn't even going to be the money to pay people that kind of stuff, that's actually just a very logical reason as to why anyone would want to shed this contract, by the way. So that one's not as bad, but I agree. The LS one was more like that. The thing is, I've got two quick angles though, and then I want to get more of a take because I know you haven't done Power Spike yet, right? When did you do Power Spike this week?
No, we're not doing it this week. Next week.
Oh, right. I know you haven't done a show on this topic, so obviously I want to get your take. But I have two little updates for you. So one is even the IBS thing, which you remember technically was outed by Rigby because he stupidly didn't think. Even though this does help defend Jojo, I'm just outing that the guy has to shit himself every day, which he never wanted put on the internet, believe it or not, mate. It's one of the reasons why I made the point, if you remember, when Arsh Goyle, the guy who wrote that shitty fucking bad rewrite of Richard's work with a bunch of wrong details in and stuff that never should have been published. I've famously made the case that there were a bunch of personal details me and Richard had we didn't publish because for the same reason. I don't know if Danny wants that private information out there. This dickhead just fucking put it on like, lol, check this out. So I already think Rigby fucked up. But anyway, once that's out there, everyone's been basically framed on this topic by Alarim, the former Immortals top laner, right? Because he's come and said, I also, he has Crohn's, not IBS, but I essentially have like stomach issues myself.
A gastrointestinal issue,
And what happens is it means that basically it's true. I'm like toilet bound. Some days I just wouldn't eat food because I couldn't manage it. Now, here's the problem with that. Again, one, we don't actually know what Jojo has. It's very different if you have Crohn's, if you have IBS, if you have diverticulitis. It's very different. Like if people know the case in Counter-Strike, I always reference that Get Right and Device had some sort of issue. I don't even think theirs was the same issue, and I'm not even sure if it affected them the same way. But what I'll say is this. Some people who actually are in esports, Monty, who have IBS and other gastrointestinal issues, reached out to me and said, that's not even true. They said that's like some boomer shit where they think like Alarim doesn't even know like the latest tech. They say in the modern day, there are literally like drugs and dietary plans and essentially ways you can sort of, like Rigby would say, like prep in advance and get all they said basically it is totally plausible to manage it. I mean, by the way, that makes more sense anyway, Monty, because think about this. Surely we'd all know someone who had IBS who would have like a nightmare career, like they'd never be at bloody work or they'd miss every meeting or every call. That's not the case, is it? Like they might have to manage it. It might be tricky. There might be sometimes it affects them. But the idea like people are going to do of like, wait a minute, but if sometimes that meant it was a problem, that means he's enabled to miss 43 times. No, he isn't. And then secondly, I'll just throw this out there. I did say this in my video, but I was soft about how I said it. The biggest problem I have goes like this, Monty. The reason I hate the fact that there even might be this stomach issue is because, bro, we have no actual metric to check that that's it real and happening. So it means the second you have the issue, even if Jojo does have that issue, well, he could just say every single day he wants to have a day off. It's flare up again, guys. Oh, am I late? Shit, I'm not actually late. Oh, I had to go to the top. You could split. That excuse could be used. By the way, we used to do this in Counter-Strike. What you do is you say your mouse doesn't work. Well, how can an admin tell you your mouse works fine? You can get a free 10-minute delay anytime you feel like it by saying your mouse doesn't work or it feels wrong. So unfortunately, that already just opens a can of worms that never gets resolved. So I want to know, I've got a whole Riot thing separately, but what do you think about that issue? Because obviously people were trying to find an angle. If you notice, what sucks about this whole topic, bro, is no one was trying to find the nuance or they were trying to pick who wins in the soap opera and who is completely right and who's completely wrong. So what do you think on some of this? Because some of these nuance is actually the most interesting part to me.
Let me tell you some things I know about Cloud9, right? Like Cloud9, they do mandatory workouts for players. They cater all the players' food. And so it is hard for me to believe that if Jojo was disclosing this medical issue that he has, that Cloud9 would not be doing things as an org that, in my experience of working there and working with their players, is very health focused. So like I would have thought, and maybe I could be wrong, but basically the identity of that org is, pretty focused on player health. So I would be surprised if they were not doing anything if they knew about it. We also don't know about, personal responsibility about that. We also don't know there's a red line, guys, that you have to be very careful not to cross. And it sounds like, okay, the EG org was doing a lot of, it sounds like from the coaches who said he was very professional, when he was with EG, and that they were managing this. Sure, that's fine. But you guys have to remember that there is a questionable line that an employer has when crossing an employee's, like, a line that they could cross about their health issues, right? Where they become liable in certain ways. And given that EG was, to put it mildly, unprofessionally run, it is possible in my mind that EG was potentially crossing some legal boundaries in the way that they were dealing with JoJo, that Cloud9 may not have been. I think it's really hard to say. We don't have enough details to be really explicit about this. And I think that the reality of the situation is this. So we can toss out all of these other ideas, because here's the reality of the economics of the scene, which I will disclose to you. And this is the shit you only get here on Summoning Insight, which is as follows. The stipends in the year 2024 for the LCS teams went up to about $2.5 million. Now, the reason why this happened was because of esports winter, all the teams saying, hey, Riot, we're totally fucked. Okay. So Riot was like, okay, here's some more money. Because they knew that, obviously the PR around the collapse of some of these teams, and some of these teams were like very close.
If you remember, the average number I reported in 2023 was, I think, almost every team was losing at least $1 million running a team.
Yeah. So effectively, like, there was an increase in stipend, which allowed many of these teams to run profitably. Now, what you have to understand about Cloud9, and I did some checking around with the teams, because you remember, as you guys know from Travis Gafford, ranking the team spends, all the teams know what each other spends, and that's all disclosed. So I can tell you guys that Cloud9 was spending the most money of any LCS team this year. So they had a very large budget. Now, they have sponsors, right? And sometimes with these sponsors, and I don't know whether this was specific to Cloud9 or not, you get part of that money conditionally on whether you make Worlds, because obviously the exposure for the brand is huge. So effectively, it's possible that Cloud9 received less money as a result of not making Worlds. Now, simultaneously to all of this, and this is, I speculated when we heard about when Riot made the announcement about having to cut 2 teams, you ask yourself, okay, how are they going to incentivize these teams to leave? Because many of the teams that you would want to leave the LCS are running profitably right now. So why would they leave? Why would they get rid of this asset that they had? And the thing that they did is that, so when there's a legal document called the TPA, or Team Participation Agreement, that exists between Riot and the teams. And this document is the contract about franchising, okay? And they franchised in 2017, and it was a 7-year contract. So this year is the year that they were renegotiating the team participation agreement, okay? And what Riot has done is that they have, like what they did with Valorant, guys, is they've shifted some of the money into performance metrics. And by performance metrics, I mean like fan engagement, okay? So this means that some of the smaller teams that you would want potentially kicked out of the LCS because they've been, competitively underperforming, or, not spending money, not developing fan bases for years, are all of a sudden in a situation next year where they would probably be losing money, because the stipends, the floor of those stipends is going down. And what I have been told is that even the performance metrics, Thorin, that they've introduced now are basically impossible to hit. Like, especially in a game that is declining when it comes to viewership, especially LCS, which has massively declined over the years, even though it's slightly up this summer compared to last summer. That was, again, we talked about that last episode, but that was like the player walkout and all that nonsense. So effectively, like, a lot of these teams were looking at it and they're like, well, we're not going to be profitable anymore. We're going to start losing money again. We have no way to, nobody really has a way to meet these metrics, but especially, Immortals, right? Especially NRG potentially. NRG, I think, had different motivations for selling, which I'll get into in a little bit, once we pass the JoJo topic. But effectively, I think Cloud9 was probably staring down some combination of being the most expensive team in the league, being on the hook for this JoJo contract, not making Worlds, which hurts, even if it didn't hurt their sponsorship dollars now, which it may well have, because there could have been, if you got $1 million deal from a sponsor, maybe 300,000 of that deal was contingent on you making Worlds. So now you only get 700,000. That fucks up your budget. And also, if you're selling sponsors for next year, it becomes harder to negotiate with future sponsors when you're like, oh, we didn't make Worlds, right? And they're like, well, how are you going to make Worlds now?
A subtle point I actually made, Monty, that a lot of people miss, but you will know, is back in the day, part of the genius that Alex Garfield had with EG in the early 2010s was he understood that since his sponsors were North American, it didn't matter that his team in Counter-Strike wasn't the best in the world. As long as he could say, I'm the champion of North America, he got all of his sponsor budget, Monty. It didn't matter that he wasn't going to win the equivalent of Worlds, the major in CS, etc. All he had to do was just go, we won ESEA, was the Counter-Strike tournament at the time. We won ESEA, so we're the North American champion, therefore we're number one in our region. Give me all the sponsorship money. And he used to be able to, as a result, get more money for being number one than like Fnatic would for being like number one in all of Counter-Strike in the world, because they only have the European budget. So I wouldn't even be surprised if to this day, sponsors don't really expect you to win Worlds, but if you Cloud9, they probably at least want you in the final or win LCS, right? That's probably still, like, I imagine, by the way, winning the LCS that has the stadium event's probably a big deal too for exposure.
Yep. Yeah. So look, I think like there is a combination of factors where we know things that we know, the team participation agreement, which we assume is set now because they announced all these other details of the Americas League, the lowering of the floor of the stipend, the expense of the Cloud9 roster, and the fact that they didn't, win a split or go to Worlds is, I think all of these factors, and they basically, as you say, Thorin, they kind of laid a trap for Jojo, where I'm sure they were telling him to be on time, but then what they probably did was they probably meticulously documented his lateness, yes, and then they're going to get involved with some lawyers, and the lawyers are going to fight it out now in order to kind of void his contract.
Actually sort of, I know this will sound weird, guys, but the reason why you can't just be the cool owner and then just fire him afterwards is because since you're in California where they've got all these insane labor laws, you actually better have all the paper trail. You need to do something like I'm sure be able to show in court you was late 40 times. That's really important, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I do think they probably have a leg to stand on here when it comes to, and here's the other thing that I will say about Jojo's potential stomach issues that I find very suspicious, Thorin. How come there were never match delays on game days? How come Keria was literally taking bathroom breaks in a stadium during the LCK finals weekend?
Yep.
I don't recall that happening with Jojo. So it's very weird that he would have 43 delays for practices, but as far as I am aware, we would have no delays in on-stage games.
Well, here's where I can shade in from some of my sources in the NA scene and Cloud9. I was told in the Mithy administration of Cloud9 that Jojo also used to be late then, Monty, but since all they ran back then was just a basic fine system, I heard he just sort of ate the fines and everyone was kind of chill about it. They were like, whatever, as long as he plays, who gives a fuck? So I think actually it sounds like within Cloud9, they maybe changed focus in the summer with this Reapered version. And then also, I think also the big shadow, that's why I saved it till now, is the whole fucking stipend thing. Because here's the problem, Monty. Do you want to know who's not getting the blame at all about this situation? But it's obvious they should be one of the main parties. Riot Games. Like, how am I supposed to imagine this, Monty? Imagine we're in the NFL, me and you have franchises, and then the salary cap, I'll make up a random one. The salary cap, I'm going to make it 150 million, right? So imagine I spend for the most expensive max contract I sign, in this analogy, I'd have to be like Patrick Mahomes or something, or Lamar Jackson, right? I sign some max contract player, and then you tell me after 1 year of playing with him, did you sign like a 3-year deal with him? Well, bad luck. Next year, the salary cap's 100 million. Like, what the fuck? Like... Bro, how am I supposed to run a business? So one, Riot has literally incentivized Cloud9 and other orgs to shed these contracts. By the way, even technically, if he'd have been the MVP of the league this split, they'd be incentivized to shed it. Because here's what you'd do, Monty. You'd shed it now and then say, but I'll sign you back for 500k instead of 750. You'd do some deal like that. Even if it was just that you still wanted to play. It's too much money. Because next year, if I'm going to get less stipend, that means I'm just, even if it's the identical contract, I'm paying more of my money for that salary. It doesn't make sense. But everyone keeps ignoring that one. So unfortunately, I can see why, especially when you fuck up LCS and Worlds, you're like, you know what? Wipe the deck. Let's get rid of the biggest contract. Oh, was that the guy also who I documented was late 40 times? You're out, sunshine. And then obviously, I mean, the other part I revealed is apparently they've been trying to sell them to like LEC orgs. And here's what's funny. I even think that got lost on fans. I forgot to mention it in my video. That's weird, Monty. Why would you sell them to LEC orgs? Because who the fuck has money in LCS? Who the fuck has money in Nobody is the answer. Do you want to know how bad it is, LCS and Riot Global? Because I'm going to clown on Riot Global big time right now. Riot Global basically is the LCS. LCS. It was their fucking like favorite child the whole time. Meanwhile, even LEC was the redheaded stepchild who had to be the fucking like the booster broadcast beforehand to like fluff the crowd. Then the fucking bull could come in and fuck LCS big time for all the big money. And remember this, Monty, when I tell you this detail, it will show you how badly Riot has misplayed their hand. Another in the classic cadre of you fucked up the subscription model of OGN, you never allowed LPL to have proper casters and world-class coverage, you kept LEC a bitch sister broadcast to the LCS, and then what did you do with the LCS? Well, remember this detail, Monty. When they started franchising, famously, my mate Carlos was like, oh, in that case, can I buy into the LCS with G2? Because that's way better to make money than Europe. NA has all those budgets. The joke now is these orgs would fucking crawl across broken glass to get into the LEC, which is a bigger league with way better, and even now, arguably, potentially bigger sponsor opportunities. That's how badly they fucked up the LCS. So the reason why they're offering new LEC teams, guys, is the difference is if you're a G2 or Fnatic, you can actually pay a big box for this guy. If you want to break the bank, you can actually afford this contract. It might be worth your while to even do, because remember, Jax doesn't want to lose money on this. He is a businessman. So I think that part is so misunderstood. Like no one in this equation is blaming Riot. Like I said, Monty, how is that not a bad faith move from Riot? Oh. I'm going to allow you to get yourself into a multi-year contract and then tell you, oh, by the way, next year I'm just giving you less money. I'm just going to fuck with your margins directly. That's like a tax on the fucking orgs.
Yep. And like this is the problem that's going on, is that, you know, you guys are trying to, like, I think everybody is focused on the wrong thing here. People are focused on blaming Cloud9 or blaming JoJo. We need to blame the fact that this is a fucking broken business model. Yeah. If it wasn't for money, guys, none of this shit would be happening.
Oh, no, of course not.
So, like, you know, and by the way, $750,000 for JoJo is literally less money than people like Afram who used to make an LCS. Like, as far, you know, it's literally a third of what Bjergsen made on Team Liquid, right? It's not big money in the history of LCS, but it is big money right now. But that goes to show again how much player salaries have fallen. And yeah, the teams used to lose a bunch of money doing this, yeah, I mean, those days are behind us. And the hope in losing that money was to provide enough entertainment and growth for the business to catch up, but it never did. And Riot's not interested in fixing it. They're just fundamentally uninterested in fixing the business model for the teams, which is why you see all of the movements that we've seen right now, because everybody whose responsibility it is to fix the business model into a sustainable path has abdicated that responsibility. John Needham, conveniently, he has another job now in publishing that, you know, he's still head of esports, but how could he do both of those jobs at the same time? Because fixing the business model of esports is a more than full-time job. Naz, she was the head of LoL esports. Conveniently, right after the, you know, when esports winter hit, took a sabbatical, then just quit. It's like, it's a shit job because they haven't figured it out, or they're not willing to figure it out. But this pattern is just going to continue. But this whole JoJo thing, people get mired in the details of the being late or his medical conditions. And, you know, the other thing that I hate, Thorin, is like, obviously we like a lot of the EG coaches and, you know, the EG staff, Peter Dunn, people who came out. Yep. But like, respectfully, Peter Dunn, he may have been good for you, but like, how do you know what he's like now? He could have been a horrible teammate now. You don't know that. And especially, I hate to tell you guys, but when people sign the big paycheck, when they get the big money, sometimes they change. Sometimes you can't know. Like he could have been the worst teammate ever after signing the big deal with Cloud9. And maybe it's not. Maybe
Monty, if you want to look at environment, there's no player in Cloud9 who's a mentor, like bigger brother figure. If you think about the team they had in EG, bro, they had Impact, they had Inspired, like they had Peter himself, like bro, they actually had like Impact in that team. I've heard it was like the fucking like the Dawn. Everyone fucking revered this guy. In Cloud9, their vibe is like we're all just skilled kids with hands. Like it's if ever was someone going to misbehave, it'd be in that team. Makes me more
They
sense.
also didn't have the robust coaching staff. Remember, it was just Mithy into just Reaper. Hi isn't a coach, guys. He's just a team manager.
I want to ask you about, because you're the one who said this. People also are blaming that detail. Like, well, where were all the coaches? Weren't it you that revealed Well, they had to get rid of him to get fucking Jojo. That's because it was a bidding war, wasn't there?
Like basically, they just didn't have money for coaches because this team was so expensive to create, and they had the highest budget team. And like obviously, Jack and the C9 leadership have an obligation to their board during esports winter, probably to not run at too much of a loss. Maybe they were profitable because again, those stipends went way up. So they didn't want to overinvest, and they thought, well, we've got this super team. Like, how much coaching could they possibly need? Turns out, a lot, as we learned. But that wasn't the thought process, I think, going into this one. And when, also it may not even be like Jojo may have been unmotivated on C9 compared to EG. I don't know if this is true, but it also could have been because of a bad environment with his teammates. Maybe none of this is Jojo's fault, as it were. Maybe like he had a really shitty time with the teammates that he had, and that was creating a bad environment where he didn't want to show up on time. And yes, that's still his fault. It's still unprofessional, but maybe there are reasons for it, right? We just can't know. And so I feel like all of the speculation by the EG coaches is really just weird because they can't possibly know what he was like within the Cloud9 team house. So like, why are we going to bat for him?
And also, mate, I even did this in my video, because even if I like you and I have a past history, if you're just full of shit, you're full of shit. And I am absolutely the person who pointed out. If you're Kelsey Moser, I don't ever want to hear you mention that other orgs might be shady. You've never spoken about what EG did to Danny. Shut your fucking mouth. There you go. How about that? How about clean up your own fucking house before you start talking about someone else's being dirty? What the fuck are you talking about? Wind your fucking neck back in. As long as if you want that to all stay in the past and never bring it up, then shut the fuck up talking about other people's problems. That's a totally consistent position. By the way, the reason I'll allow Peter Dunn to do it, Monty, is Peter Dunn gave his fucking job up because of that situation. He couldn't live with that situation. That's actually what I have the most time for Peter Dunn in this equation, because I actually do believe he has the best in mind for Danny, and he does care about coaching environments. He does care about. He's proven all that by putting his money where his mouth is, bro. So respect to him. Some of the others were clownish though. Like the worst one was that one I regged on, that Razdan guy who was like, "Stop spreading disinformation and use real words." It's like, so disinformation is other people's actual experience that you didn't have. Like, you're a fucking idiot, mate. And spoiler, weren't you already a coach because Peter Dunn left and they had no money left in esports when it happened? Like, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't know about that. I don't know about that one. Sadly, though, it was another example of like a giant drama where, as I said, I actually feel like I'll probably do a follow-up about some of these issues, but I feel like most people did just want the soap opera angle of like, who is the bad guy, basically. And then the obvious options were, it was either Jack from Cloud9, Jojo, or I don't know, a coach or something. That's probably about it, right?
By the way, guys, let me tell you a little bit about esports. The bad guy is always Riot. Okay, it's always Riot. It's always the developer, because they're the ones who have failed to deliver on their promise to create sustainable businesses for the teams. And that's why the Saudis are involved. Like, Riot doesn't have to let Saudi Arabia use their intellectual property. They don't have to let them do that. Okay. So it's the teams are pressuring them to do it, right? The teams are doing that, but the teams are pressuring them to do it because there's never been a successful media rights deal, and there's never been revenue sharing off skins, and an understanding of transparency around the marketing efforts of esports, right? So it's always Riot. Like, people will act badly. Sure. I'm not saying the teams are absolved of responsibility, or Jojo's absolved of responsibility. Like, people will act badly, but the reason they are acting badly is because of the money situation within the esports ecosystem. That's why they're doing it, guys. If that was solved, I think people would act better. That's my take. Hot take.
I want to make a point, by the way, because there's a separate thing we can spin into that comes out of the whole situation of LCS economics, Monty. And I think we're actually, even though we never discussed this, I think we're simpatico and we're on the same wavelength, because there's a take everyone in esports, even industry people, are doing, bro, that is driving me up the wall, because it's literally the opposite of the real take. You'll have heard it. It goes like this. So you mean NRG bought CLG just to leave? I know you mean you were thinking the same thing, Monty.
I actually think this is brilliant.
Do you know the worst thing about this, guys? Right, think about how that was just framed. So NRG bought CLG Spot and then just left after a year. No, they didn't do any of that ever. That was never, ever what was reported. That's not what we told you. We went out of our way to explain that what actually happened is the other way around. MSG, who owned CLG, basically bought into via equity swaps and cash. They paid the cash to NRG so NRG could have a spot in League of Legends LCS. Hence why, Monty, are you ready? This is going to blow your mind, bro. When I don't pay money, in fact, you pay me money, and I just give you a little bit of equity that isn't worth anything right now, and then later I find out the running costs aren't worth it. Do you know what's entirely consistent and not weird? Is to choose, I just don't want those running costs. I'd like to leave the league. And if I can also, are you ready for the genius, Monty? Because I didn't pay for the actual partner spot, like the 10 million, the 12 million. If you're going to give me 6 million, that's actually called plus money for me. I was already in for a year.
More than 6 million.
It actually makes more sense to leave after a year, you dunces. If any of you understood what we're talking about with the LCS economics that I tried to stress last year, it makes perfect sense and isn't in any way inconsistent that NRG would say, you know what, it's been real. We got our championship, but I think we're off. I saw you also were on that bit because that one was tilting me so hard. So bro, you've gotten every detail of this story wrong.
I do want to talk about this and the funny thing about the NRG thing, Thorin, was when I was suspecting it was 100 Thieves and Immortals that were leaving. I didn't even think about this possible angle for NRG, but when I saw it, I thought about it for 2 seconds. I was like, why the fuck didn't I think of this? It's actually brilliant. You know what they're doing?
It is genius.
I'll explain why it's brilliant. But before that, guys, I do want to shout out our sponsor for this episode, which is if you would like to shave yourself like Cloud9 shaves costs with Jojopyun's contract, you can check out our sponsor, Manscaped. They're back, guys. And you, by the way, you can try their new Beard and Balls bundle featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. The lawnmower ensures you're always looking your best below the waist, while the Beard Hedger takes care of everything above. There's this lovely Manscaped boxer briefs.
Did you give me that?
It's been great for me. I've tidied myself. I don't have a beard, but I do use the nose hair trimmer that they have, which has been great. Okay. And I have used the lawnmower to clean myself up.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
And it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Also, what's great about their the clippers that they have is like the lawnmower works in the shower, so it creates a lot less of a mess. So you can just get it wet, holds a charge forever, basically works super well. So you guys, of course, can head on over and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code LFN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code LFN at manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results, just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it. They sell soap as well. You can get packages with all the tools. Like
I do like that one, the crop reliever one. If you like your thighs ever rub together or something, that actually really helps. Like it actually soothes that like sensation of the skin.
Yeah, it's good.
Or if you did a big hike or something,
So yeah, if you guys have been thinking about cleaning yourself up, make yourself a little bit more attractive, Manscaped can help you with that. And all of our audience is men, so pretty easy. But anyway, the stuff works great.
Yes. It's like there's two jokes there. One, I actually once did do that on YouTube because that's just who I am, Monty. I once took that screenshot of the demographic breakdown where it said on my YouTube, as you can imagine, like 10 years ago, it's like 99% men, 1% women. And my joke on Twitter was, how do I get that to 100%? Like, listen, because I just know how comedy works, guys. There's that. And then secondly, I also do appreciate that we're not just trying to make revenue for this company and also like make money off for ourselves. We actually are trying for real. We're essentially acting like that movie Hitch, where like Will Smith was like that cool sort of dating coach who helped like the like nerd guy out. Who was it? Like fucking Kevin, whatever his name is, out of King of Queens or something. Like one of those like fat messes in Hollywood. And like we're basically doing that for our fans. We're like leveling up their food, their cooking skills, the fucking how they carry their data on the internet, grooming, how they smoke weed, how they groom themselves, how they use soap and hygienic things. We're actually leveling esports up. Yeah. I am esports, but we're leveling esports itself up again.
I love our sponsors, man. Yeah. So thanks to Manscaped again.
And to everyone who buys it, everyone who comes who uses the code. Shout out to you.
Supporting our sponsors, best way to support LFN if you like our shows. We've got lots of new exciting stuff in the coming weeks, guys. Spoiler: we got our first peripheral sponsor coming now. If you guys, the Monty and Wolf show will be coming out. It's our first one with that. So you guys can enjoy that. So let's talk about the NRG thing. Again, we're going to talk about this on the Four Horsemen. So I'm going to go over this briefly. So as Thorin said, the deal with Madison Square Garden was this. So the process here was CLG is acquired by Madison Square Garden because of the hype. CLG was winning inside Madison Square Garden. Yep. Madison Square Garden is a company. Madison Square Garden owns the Garden, the stadium. They also own the New York Rangers and the New York Knicks. So the professional sports hockey and basketball teams in New York City and Manhattan. And they were like, ooh, this is cool. You guys sold out a stadium. We're going to buy the team that won, right? So they entered into negotiations with CLG. They purchased CLG. Now, CLG, they were involved obviously in League of Legends. They also had CLG Red, which was the women's like Counter-Strike team. They also had a bunch of Smash players and some other like peripheral players, influencers. They were based out of actually they were like 5 minutes away from my house in Mid-City in Los Angeles, their facility. So they had a whole facility out there. And by the time they had kind of built out this robust coaching structure, they were spending a lot of money is the point. And at the end of the day, they realize, like everyone else is realizing right now, that this is an unsustainable business model. You know, it's funny, Thorin, the professional sports teams who are used to running profitable sports businesses like Golden Guardians and Madison Square Garden are the teams that went out pretty quickly.
Oh, wait a minute, Monty. That's weird because I've been told the way that money works in esports goes like this, Monty. If you're really rich and have loads of money, you don't care about wasting money. That's a real thing I've been told about millionaires, billionaires, Oh, you mean it's the other way around, Monty? And actually the people who really care about the pennies. Wait a minute. You're almost telling me, Monty, it's almost like if you take care of the pennies, you take care of the pounds. So actually not wasting even frivolous amounts of money is how you become rich.
Also, you know, famously Andy Miller, who is the principal owner of NRG, right? He is a partial owner of the Sacramento Kings NBA team and was a former vice president at Apple underneath Steve Jobs. So I mean, he has obviously a lot of money and has had a very successful career, and he's very passionate about gaming and esports. But this is all to say that, you know, when CLG was at the end of their rope, basically, what happened was, as you alluded to, what they did was an equity swap. So MSG had all of these costs that were associated with CLG. And so what they did was they put all of those costs onto NRG. And what they got in exchange was there was no, as I understand it, there was no money that changed hands. So NRG didn't pay MSG. What they did was they absorbed all their costs and they gave MSG a equity stake within NRG, right? And you have to remember NRG, they have a bunch of influencers in like Fortnite and Minecraft, I think, and like kids games. And they have this facility called the NRG Castle, which is like a streaming thing in LA. They own Full Squad Gaming, which is like a TikTok like content creator collective.
It's huge, so they have one of those ones that has loads of views. Yeah,
like millions. Like they have millions of followers, I think, on TikTok. So they've been very successful in a lot of these more influencer-based businesses. And they have had, you know, a variety of esports teams in the past. They got into esports. They owned the San Francisco Shock, which was the Overwatch League team that was very successful that I worked with in Overwatch League. So they did buy into that franchise as well. So this is all to say, they didn't take money, okay? You know, Overwatch League is no longer there. Their business has value outside of being an esports, is my point, and you may not know that. So, but the funny thing about this, guys, is basically the payment for this exit, as I understand it, was larger than previous ones. It was, you know, it was $6 million when we saw teams leave last time. It was in the realm of $8 to $10 million this time that was offered. So it was actually more money. So NRG comes in, they slash costs, like they accidentally kind of win the championship based off of like CLG's, the systems that CLG put in place. So credit to Madison Square Garden. They were actually running a good team, guys. At least from a competitive and like coaching perspective. Now, what NRG did after that win was go to Worlds, you know, make quarters. Then they sacked all their coaches. They drastically reduced costs because the costs at CLG, from what I understand, were outrageous, guys. Like they had, you know, all of these like personal trainers and everything.
Anyone who had those facilities had to be insane anyway. Like those costs were insane in LA.
It was out of control for like all of the services that they were offering the players. So NRG came in and said, this is ridiculous. Like this isn't sustainable. So they cut a lot of those costs. Okay, so now we get to this year. So if you are offered this payment, guys, remember you did an equity swap and you are being offered $8 to $10 million to leave. Okay, so the equation that you're now doing is the equity that I gave up to Madison Square Garden worth more or less than $8 to $10 million, because the stipend's going down, so you might have costs again. So what I think is genius about this entire thing, Thorin, is like how much, we can guess how much equity they gave to MSG as part of this. I don't know, 20%?
Yeah, something like that.
That's probably pretty high,
yes.
maybe.
Yes.
So the question is 20% of NRG, the brand, worth more or less than $8 to $10 million? And
in theory,
it's worth way more. It's way more. Yeah. The answer is it's way more.
Especially because if you don't know, NRG really is like a G2 where they're like them and Team Liquid Cloud. They can all be here in 20 years, mate. They can be if there ever really is an NFL of esports, they will be the org. So that's also the equity you hold. That's not like my Flashpoint equity, Monty, which spoiler, I may as well even lose that piece of paper at this point in time. You know what I mean? Like he'll never be worth 50. That's real equity.
Right. And like, let's put it, the way that businesses are valued, let's just put this in perspective, right? If there is a valuation, this is just theoretical numbers, guys, right? But if there is a value, if they gave MSG 20% of the company, and we say, let's take the low end, so $8 million is 20%. Okay. Like even if companies are based off of their revenue, sometimes they're based off potential, like it's all hocus pocus at the end of the day. But a lot of times, you base companies off of their revenue. And let's say you get a very generous, like tech style valuation, which this is basically like the most generous I can be.
It's what they used to do on the Forbes, where they gave the 400 million valuation, which is obviously very, very generous. That's it.
So like, let's say like we're giving it an 8x revenue multiple, right? And we're saying 20% is worth 8 million, right? Well, their revenue would have to be $5 million a year for that to be relevant. Right. For that to be an appropriate valuation. I do not think NRG is doing $5 million in revenue a year, which means that they basically I think, as I understand it, this effectively turned into a very good fundraising round for them, because now they just got $8 to $10 million at a basically a huge discount to them that they can invest into their influencer or other esports businesses where it'd be more profitable. So I think in actuality, this is actually fucking genius, because effectively they now have a giant pile of cash to reinvest, and it's more money than they would have gotten by directly selling that equity stake or raising money based off of it. So this is all my speculation, guys.
In the meantime, they got to have a team in the league, potentially get sponsors off that, and win the championship. You idiots! And they only won on this. That's why not only was it a bad take, but it was the obverse of my other favorite shit take in esports that goes like this, Monty, because it's the same thinking. It's where you don't understand finance and in the game results are different. So the one when someone wins the championship and they're like, well, now that they've won, they'll get all sponsors and they should just like get another stop. It's like, that's not how this works at all. Like winning in the game never gave them 1 cent more. Like that's how good you are at selling sponsorships, you dickhead. If you're good at selling sponsorships, you can do it as the second place team. You don't have to win. But if you're terrible at selling sponsorships, you can win 1 million championships. You'll never get a sponsor. So that's also one of my favorite things is people refuse to understand that like the in-game results are irrelevant. Like, because what they're really trying to say is this, if they were actually being honest, Monty, they pretended to know about the finances by seeing the fee that they bought CLG for, which again, we just pointed out, factually, they did not buy CLG. Please learn that, especially because you're all saying they gave them a giant bag of money with a fucking dollar sign. That never happened. But it's even worse than that, because actually in this analogy, you're thinking, but how do you leave after you won the LCS? No, what you need to ask yourself again, you're right, Monty, is how did Riot fuck up the LCS so much that accidentally tripping over and winning the championship doesn't in any way make you want to stay? Why is that the case, sir? And that's a Riot question, not an NRG question. Because I agree with you. I think NRG is a fantastic org, mate. It's actually not a bad sign to NRG that they're leaving. It's a bad sign for the LCS, mate. When NRG is saying we're hopping ship, that tells you the ship's going down, mate.
Well, and also I think for CLG fans out there, and I know people are upset because it's like, oh, they bought CLG and now they ruined it. It's like, no, Madison. Like, ask yourself the following question: how could a massive business like Madison Square Garden buy CLG, want to run it pretty well, in my opinion, and then because there is no business model because of Riot, they want to get out, and now we have this result, Like, this result is objectively, I think, very good for NRG.
In theory, like I said, Monty, the number one reason that a sports franchise or sports franchise owner should want into the LCS is the belief that one day this will be the NFL of League of Legends. Yes. So what they're doing is charting out early territory, hopefully like the NFL, where, like I say that story every time, we would all go back and tell John Elway, we'll do the crowdfund with you. Let's buy the Broncos now in 1999 or whatever it was. Obviously, it's going to be worth like 10x. Obviously, if you really thought that was possible, you'd never sell. In fact, Monty, it's worse than that. If you actually really thought one day this will make profit, you'd even eat the costs of a few million a year. What this implies to me is there is no roadmap where essentially the people who know the most about owning franchises in sports can ever see a way to get money. That's why Golden Guardians are gone with the Golden State Warriors. Fucking these people are gone now with NRG. And who's left? Like just endemic fuckers like TLC that made their name
nothing else.
Anyway.
Who have nothing else, by the way.
You don't have a reason to leave there. Right now they need to. Like their legacy is in this game, It's actually really dark time for LCS, mate.
I mean, I think TL's a little bit different because they have a pretty diversified business at this point, even outside of esports. You know, they have like media creation companies, they have like Wikipedia, you know, but it's like, it's not a good sign that basically everybody who had a diversified business, including TSM, by the way, is out. Right.
Well, it's like I always said, it's obvious though. That's like saying, well, what do you mean? Yeah, you've got a tumor, TSM, but the rest of you is healthy. And they were like, why don't we just cut the tumor off? The esports team and just keep the healthy part of the body.
And by the way, we should also consider the fact that part of this equity swap was probably, you know, part of this was probably that MSG retained got a seat on the board of NRG as a company. So like we should probably assume that MSG agreed with doing this.
Which, by the way, is also why Andy Miller and NRG are geniuses, because that's an example of someone you want on your board, someone who owns real life sports franchises and the biggest arena, most famous arena in America. You want essentially, you're right, Monty. They essentially made it sound like, hey, we're doing a deal. Actually, you're just doing me 50 favors. Like, this is great. I get money, I win the championship, and you're part of my business and care about what I'm doing now. Oh, great. Oh no, shit. Yes, I'm getting wrecked on this deal. Like, Andy Miller killed it, mate. He killed it.
So anyway, I just thought it was funny. And like, again, I just feel like the Jojopyun issue, you know, the reason why these things are happening, guys, is because there is no hope for the business of teams in esports. And everybody is finally grokking that reality.
By the way, I've got an angle for you as well, bro. That's really crazy. This just shows no one ever actually cared about what players made in the LCS money. That topic last year was a fake story. Do you know what they actually care about, though, Monty? They care about their favorite players like Doublelift saying, hey, I'm being oppressed. This is wrong, man. And they, hey, what's going on here? Doublelift being oppressed. He's only getting paid like $1 million this year. Like, this is outrageous. So here's how I know they don't care about it. Because you know what, Monty? Where was the crazy widespread protests when two teams left the league? Think about it logically, Monty. The second 2 of the 10 franchises leave, automatically everyone's going to make less salary because there's less people to bid for you when your contract is available. So you're all going to make less money. Like I'll just go and say it now, Monty. I'm almost certain some of those dig players will have gotten very low contracts compared to the rest of their career. All of those guys were used to the old C9 and the TL contract. Bro, they'll have been slumming it. I bet it was so bad, Monty. They were almost just like the best LCS casters, only making low 6 figures. That's straight fire the way I did that there. Anyway, but whatever. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. I just can do that. Anyway, no, that's another detail, Monty. Why is everyone cool with that? Why is Riot never to blame, by the way? What I don't get is this. Here's the weirdest detail. What's weird is in CS, we fucking hate Valve, and they made a game we acknowledge we love. You all acknowledge in League you actually hate League of Legends and consider it a form of self-harm that you can't stop playing it after 10 years when some cunt can lock in Yubi and ruin the whole game. But somehow you're letting Riot have a pass every time to just slide on by when they're the ones fucking up. Like, it's actually Riot that's fucking all your pro players and all the teams. And the worst thing, to link it all the way back to the beginning, is I'll tell you what, Monty, wouldn't now be a brilliant time to dip into that non-existent war chest full of all the money they made from the Twitch subs and all the compendiums and, you know, the like $400 million I just said they could have made. Now would be a brilliant time to break that out. Oh, what's that? You just said apropos of nothing like some mad cunt. Lol, let's just burn that hypothetical money and just not pick it up for free. Lol, I'm doing it. By the way, nothing has ever aged worse than that spin that, like, we don't charge because we think esports should be free and we want to foot the bill.
Again, there's
that
Thorin, there's only two options that exist for that, which is basically like they did the math and they realized that it was more profitable to to not do it.
Yes.
Which meant that they were making 100% of the money that they spent, that they could have gotten via marketing. So it's either that they were making so much money that they could just hide and keep all to themselves because of esports and like players buying skins that they saw. We already know, they announced it, that three of their top six skins of all time are world skins. By the way, we know that because I don't know why they would say that, but they did. And then, so the jig's kind of up. So it turns out they were actually making a fuck ton of money off of esports, or they're just idiots. I mean, those are the only two options. They're either so stupid, which I don't think is true. I just think they're bad faith actors. But I think we should talk about the LNG and Scout issue.
Yes,
because that's another big topic that's coming up this week. We do have another sponsor, though, for this episode, which is Mando. So we talked earlier about how you might be able to groom yourself, but we also have, especially for you guys out there, hygiene solutions. So I've been using Mando over the last few months, worked extremely well for me. It is a deodorant and soap company, guys, and it is not an antiperspirant, so it doesn't contain any aluminum, which I personally really appreciate. And instead it uses mandelic acid, which prevents the odor from forming basically in the first place. So you don't, you still sweat, you can still cool down, but it's not actually clogging your pores with aluminum. So I've really enjoyed it. They have a bunch of like more masculine scents like bourbon leather that you can get. They also have a variety of different products. They have cream deodorant, so it's like more like a lotion that you can rub into your armpits or any other place where you might have body odor. They have stick deodorant. They have wipes that you can wipe down areas, great for camping, or if you guys have been doing a intense activity and you need to clean yourself up a little bit before heading on to the next thing. Those have been great. They have soap as well that you can use in the shower that prevents the formation of body odor. So I've been really enjoying it. And Mando's been great. So you guys can try it out. You don't have to commit, but you can get a starter pack, which gives you a variety of these products. It's perfect for new users. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and you can pick 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or the deodorant wipes, and it has free shipping. We also have a discount code for you guys. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code SUMMONING at shopmando.com, shopmando.com. So thank you very much for Mando. We've been really lucky to have them. So enjoy guys. Summoning for that starter pack. Let's talk about LNG Scout and another issue where Riot is up to their old shenanigans of breaking their own rules. But will anybody talk about it? No, because they can't, because everybody else is paid by Riot. So let's go. What are your thoughts on Yagao suddenly replacing Scout, even though it is explicitly against the rule book for Worlds that Riot has released?
Right. The obvious problem here is basically that you've actually got a very similar scenario to what happened with Danny and Cowrie back in EG in summer of 2022, where if you remember, the system went that you had to have declared your subs already before playoffs of like LCS. They didn't, and I think they did this on purpose to actually get the fake sub aspect. They didn't declare Cowrie because I think they wanted to make Danny like, bro, we don't have a sub. You got to play. Now come into this room with just me, the CEO. What's that? You've come out, double plus good. I want to play now, and I've totally not been coerced. Oh, excellent, cool. He's consenting to this, guys. Now sign in blood. Like anyway, so he signed and played, and famously, once he broke down after they qualified to Worlds, if you remember, EG went, "We need an emergency sub," and it's like, that's weird. You've already got 3 subs. 2 of them are junglers. Just put a sub
coaches.
in. No, but the thing is, though, he's a jungler, though, isn't he? So, like, I needed ADC. So then Riot was like, well, I don't know. Why don't you fuck around and just take that guy out of your academy team? Even though that's a total violation of all of our emergency sub rules. So at the time, I think just because of the mental health spectre looming over that topic, I think it was just taken for granted by people like Team Liquid and Cloud9 and the other squads out there. Like, look, it's just a bad look for us if we complain because this might be like a mental health crisis, not just, them entering a better player. So similar things happened. In the LPL, LNG, who was like, I would have said like maybe like the 4th team for most of the split, pretty good team all in all. The one that Scout, obviously double MVP last year, players for. In the end, went through the regional and actually immediately qualified. They actually clapped Weibo, who'd been in the final of the LPL 3-0 and qualified to Worlds. So you think to yourself, brilliant, right? Light's back on form. Gala, he's fucking rolling again. Scout's back in his game. They've figured out what they're going to do jungle-wise. Like, everything's going well. Let's get into this. Let's get into LNG at Worlds. By the way, I actually think if they'd have taken their real lineup, they'd probably be similar, like 4th or 5th most likely team to win Worlds. They'd be a dark horse to win the whole thing. And spoiler, Scout has won Worlds before. He actually was like a world champion, and he was the MVP twice last year of the LPL. So you'd want that lineup to go. Now, it turns out, for whatever reason, like, we'd actually talked about this in the past, and we talked about the fact that Scout couldn't come back to LCK. There apparently, the whole time since he left EDG, there was some weird looming contract dispute, a bit like you've heard this thing now, that it was always the case, apparently, that Milky Way was going to get called back to RNG as opposed to FPX. EDG was just waiting to, like, invoke this thing where they claim he basically shouldn't have been able to join LNG or something weird. But because they couldn't block him playing in the LPL, they have figured out, well, we can stop you playing at Worlds, though. And so the issue is, basically, it seems like Scout's just not going to be able to get out of it. So then the point became, right, well, who do they use as a mid laner? Now, again, to refer back to the Danny situation, problem solved, Monty. Whoever you've got in your org that you registered as a sub, you can use him. Now, if you don't have a mid laner, you shout a look, aren't you? You know what? I think when your mid laner isn't eligible to play at Worlds, you should, are you ready? Really bold take here, have probably a worse mid laner. This is mental, though, because one, they already were going to now just let them take another mid laner from LPL. By the way, not even someone contracted to LNG or even plays in LNG in any context. So the maddest one of all is, actually, because initially it was just like maybe they can take anyone who didn't qualify, a lot of people like me and Nynera just thought, right, this is our angle to just crowbar Rookie in there. Put Rookie in there, bro. Give him a fucking other shot. Put me in the game, coach, because obviously the dream is, imagine him actually going, fucking around as a dark horse and then winning Worlds like a different team. Mate, I would be insufferable. But are you ready? This is where, as a Rookie fan, the universe has designed a new cruel and unusual way for Rookie not to qualify to Worlds. You know how we all celebrated when they got that like fluke win in the LPL playoffs and made it further? Well, in doing so, that made them top 6, which has a weird rule, which is because he fluked top 6, he now can't be the player to go in. So I don't even get my own rigged version. Because if people don't know, that's like a classic one from Counter-Strike I always reference, which is in Counter-Strike, when you had ESL Pro League and ECS, famously, Na'Vi, because they didn't want to have to qualify, didn't play in ECS, Monty. So there were real years, this happened with Mouse Sports, where teams in ECS who needed a ringer used to use Simple, the best player in the world, and I'm not joking, he would drop like a 50 bomb on like the best teams in the world, play way better than the player you should have had who would have been present, and essentially your sub was like a super sub. So even though in this case it's not quite that bad, it would have been worse if it was Rookie. Apparently now they're going to use Yagao from JDG. Now, I will say there's almost a fairness to that because he's having probably one of the worst splits of his career. So that at least, terrible. That's not, at least, it's not like you did pop Rookie in their actual Worlds winner, like I think best of all time player. But I agree with you. The big issue here is actually this issue that why are all the other teams fine with this as the sub? Because I saw a couple of things. I saw people like, yeah, but then LNG qualified. Now they're getting punished. Yeah, you shouldn't sign players in a way that doesn't actually allow them to properly be contracted by you and go to Worlds. That you should be punished for that. That makes sense. Secondly, the idea that you can bring in, like, not only, bro, Yagao is a fucking LPL champion. Like, this guy's a champion of the LPL. He's not even just like he's not Fisher when he used to play fucking EDG and be shit. Like, he's actually like a champ. If I'm the other teams, I already said before, I think they should have done it in LCS with Danny. If I was all those other playoff teams, Team Liquid, who just lost to them, Cloud9, and I can't remember who the other team even was, the third one, 100 Thieves. I would have just gone to Riot and said, we're not even playing the matches if you let this happen. Why the fuck would they get an upgrade and or a player that isn't on their roster? So similarly, if I'm every team, but by the way, the most obvious ones should be the teams that are below them. If you're Team Liquid, if you're G2, if you're Fnatic, if you're Mad Lions, if you're FlyQuest, why aren't you on Front Street with a picket sign? Why are they allowed to play with a different player, an LPL champion? Come on then, give me your thoughts.
Well, there's so much here because there's so much precedent that's already been set. And like, this is a clear and complete violation of competitive integrity. And look, I'm the rules asshole, guys. Like, I'm the one who bangs the drum about this all the time. This is what I was saying when they made the substitution for Cowrie for Danny, which is that the rules must be enforced because this is an abusable it's a possible abuse of the rules and competitive integrity by teams, not only potentially now, as in now when it happened with Danny, but in the future. And guess what, guys? It turned out that it was a fraudulent reason for benching that player, because we found out later that it wasn't some random mental health issue that Danny had. It was a mental health issue that was exacerbated and preyed upon by the organization, thereby creating an even grosser breach of competitive integrity.
That means, Monty, is if a player's not good enough, just bully him until he has to quit and get a better player.
And they get a better player. And here's the thing, and people will be like, well, Cowrie wasn't better than Danny. He wasn't that meta. You don't understand. Like, Cowrie was a better player on the champions, the AD champions in that meta than Danny was. So it was an actual upgrade to Danny at that point in time. Did he have the same ceiling that Danny did? No. Like, Danny was an overall better player, but at that specific point in time, because of the Lucian meta that was persisting, Cowrie was seen as a better option. And in fact, he did take 100 Thieves to 5 games. And as I understand it, Thorin, the reasoning behind why Riot made this decision was as follows. Well, we sold out, remember, because the finals weekend is 2 days and it's in the stadium, and they sold tickets for the first day, which is the losers bracket final. And it was between 100 Thieves and EG. And the reasoning was, well, we sold tickets for this day. We can't disappoint the fans with a substitute like jungler or coach in an AD carry position. So we have to allow this to happen. So they break their own rules. Now, the crazy thing about this, and look, I'm just going to say this straight up. I don't know anything about Chinese law, guys, but I can tell you what I do know about the Scout situation, which is, I've said this on this show before. Several years ago, before Scout went to LNG, he signed a contract with KT. He signed it, okay? And there was a huge issue with him signing 2 contracts, one with LPL and one with LCK at that time, which meant that he did not end up going to the LCK, but he did sign a fucking contract with KT Rolster. And that is probably part of this entire issue, because what EDG is claiming right now is that basically Scout and his agent have created like this fraudulent atmosphere. And I'm not sure whether it's with LNG, with KT, or with both organizations. But the idea that neither Scout nor his agent nor LNG knew about any of this is absurd, because there was already a court case and they're relitigating it because EGG didn't think that they got enough money. And what has happened is they have frozen the Chinese government has frozen Scout's assets and has issued a travel ban so he does not flee the country, because they're worried that he's just going to peace out, transfer all his money, and just never come back to China in his life, right? So that's why this is happening. So the idea that nobody knew about this, we're never going to get to the bottom of this. And you know what? Riot's not going to get to the bottom of this either, because there's not time to get to the bottom of this. This is obviously extremely complicated. Everybody is incentivized to lie.
Also, notice, Monty, it leans into that thing we've hinted at in the past that no one's allowed to talk about in the LCK or LPL, which is this famous trend that if you go to the LPL and you make too much money, you're sort of not allowed to take it all out the country. That's just something that's a thing, guys.
Yes.
I won't go into it more, but it's one of those things that it's just known. You don't say it out loud. You don't talk about that aspect.
Yes.
It's the hidden secret darkness of LPL, basically.
Which is why, by the way, a lot of
Rookie and Doinby will probably never come back. They'll just be there forever at this point.
A lot of the contracts, especially in the early days that LCK or like Korean players were signing with LPL teams, included the teams purchasing real estate, so buildings or coffee shops, and then transferring those real estate into the players' names as a way of bypassing, getting the money out. So they would actually just the Chinese companies would buy real estate or buy businesses and then transfer those over as part of the payments to the players. So anyway, this is all to get to the point where everybody's incentivized to lie. LNG is incentivized to lie because they want to claim ignorance so that they can get a substitute player or play with Scout. Scout's going to lie and Scout's agency is going to lie because he's the one who's he wants to go to Worlds, obviously. He might even be incentivized to forever escape China, like they are claiming he wants to do, which makes sense. EDG is incentivized to lie because they're trying to keep him there in order to gain more money out of this situation. So the point is, we cannot know what the truth of this is. But what we can know, Thorin, is that some combination of people knew about this. And it is almost unbelievable that neither LNG nor Scout could
Well,
be.
I'm going to say right now, Monty, here's why I know it can't be true, because you know this as well. Here's another detail a lot of fans don't understand. You know, in Counter-Strike right now, there was a big scandal. We actually addressed it on the Four Horsemen, where Valve didn't understand how difficult it is for Russians to get visas. And they were like, new rule, you're only allowed to invite people to a tournament 8 weeks before. And it's like, you know, you've just essentially made all the Russians just fail to get their visa there. Like, that rule doesn't work. Well, what people don't get is, you might wonder then, how do people go to majors in Counter-Strike? Because, Monty, the second you're even viable to qualify, you just apply for the visa immediately, even if you don't end up going and you don't qualify. So similarly, there's no way, Monty, LNG was like, right, Expedia.com, what flight do you want, Scout? Do you want Windows? Oh, you can't go. What?
Your passport's flagged. Weird.
They knew 100% before they probably even started the regional, bro. Like, you know what I mean?
And
like,
like
no
the claim,
no
you know,
way.
like the claim is like, you know, Scout knew about it, but LNG wasn't told. Like, there's a bunch of these conflicting claims that are going around. So the way it works, and I explained this on previous episodes of SI, is that for every team, but particularly when either it's a Chinese team or all of the teams are going to China, you all have to apply for visas well ahead in advance before you even qualify, which is why, Thorin, you know, they're allowing Yagao to go because Yagao has a visa, clearly, because he would have applied even though, you know, he's not going to Worlds, right? So they needed to select a mid laner that would actually have an approved visa for this tournament to Europe in advance. And, you know, what's funny, Thorin, is like the rumors, I don't know how substantial these are, is that, like you said, they couldn't pick a top 6 team. But where's the rule? Can somebody please show me the rule where this is like, if you need an emergency sub, you can't. By the way, guys, I'm pretty sure that rule doesn't exist. That is shit Riot made up.
Isn't it? It's like, wait a minute, we're going to break all our rules and do something you're not
we have
allowed
a
to
rule
do.
for that.
All right, well, in that case, can I have rookie? Well, no, that's against the rules. Like, what are you saying out loud? It doesn't make sense. I know it's mad, isn't it?
It doesn't make any sense. And also, like, so the weird thing about JDG, Thorin, is sure, like, they lost to NIP in the second round of LPL playoffs, but they were still a game away from making the world championship through the regional qualifier. So they set an arbitrary rule, which is like, well, why wouldn't it count for regionals? But no, it's only top 6 and summer playoffs. You know, you can't select a player from there. So the rules themselves seem bizarre and arbitrary. Now, presumably Riot or Tencent said this because they didn't want the perception that, you know, rookie or an equivalent player, you know, losing Scout is going to be horrible for LNG no matter what, because he's the heart of this team, right? Like, there was never going to be an upgrade situation. But
also assumed, by the way, he's the reason why, like, they play that style and the macro style, etc. Like, of course, he's the player who does that, clearly.
Yeah. Him and Tarzan. I mean, their macro's gotten a lot worse, if we're being honest. But, you know, yes. And like, I just look at this and I think to myself, like, this is ripe for abuse, because clearly there are a bunch of people lying here, and you need to let the courts solve this. Because if LNG, if Scout didn't tell LNG, then LNG should sue Scout. You know what I mean? Like, that's almost certainly a breach of his contract. Like, he would have had to have notified them about potential other contracts or travel bans that he could have, because that affects their ability to perform at international tournaments, right? So, like, that just needs to be settled between Scout and LNG. Like, this all needs to be settled outside of the World Championship. And the reality of the situation, Thorin, is like, LNG needs to run with the substitutes they have. The rule book that is on lolesports.com says roster lock is August 16th, 2024. And you have to designate your substitutes. And LNG should have to play with a substitute player that they already designated at the World Championship, because China is a black box, guys. And the precedent that this sets is that, oh, well, if a team qualifies for Worlds, well, a player can have a mysterious issue as to why they can't travel, which, by the way, could be engineered by the Chinese government. It's a dictatorship, guys. Like, they could be like, well, we're going to make up this reason and the government's going to go along with it. So therefore we can substitute players and assemble some sort of super team heading into the World Championship. Or maybe this player isn't right for this meta, so we're just going to get this player who's a star on not a top 6 team or whatever random rule Riot decides to put in there. And we're going to bring them along with us, and it's going to give us a better chance at this international event. It is clearly a precedent that could be abused very heavily. And it cannot be allowed under competitive integrity to stand. And you know who is ultimately responsible for this is Chris Greeley, because he is now the head of LoL Esports. So why the fuck isn't he doing anything about this? It's not actually that hard to say, well, you're shit out of luck this year, LNG. If you didn't know about this, sue Scout. This is your problem. This is your problem with Scout. So sue him if you want. But if you did know, get fucked. And if you didn't know, fuck Scout. That's what you should be doing. And that's it. Run with the substitutes you have. Because as far as I can tell, from the Danny situation, from this situation, I don't even understand the point of emergency substitutes. I don't even understand the point.
Because in this case, it's even stupider that there's like that limiting factor of like, but not, by the way, JDG was 6. I assume they mean top 5. You can't have top 5 is what I assume they mean, because Nip was 5th and JDG was 6th, right? But it's even stupider because actually the rookie example is exactly why this shouldn't be allowed, Monty. What if there is a player, like, by the way, if people don't know, like, I'm sure everyone who watches this show can accept, no matter what they think of what me and you think about the LPL money, they surely respect Kelsey Moore's opinion, right? I believe in spring, Kelsey Moser had rookie as like the second best mid laner in the league, right? So, and he's already one of the best players to ever play League of Legends and a world champion, many time MVP, etc. Right? What if he'd have been, Monty, just on a worse team? What if he'd have been on anyone's legend and come 7th? So you mean I can now...
What if you just lost one more game to JDG in the playoffs?
And by the way, what if also, in this case, it still would be a downgrade because Scout is like even better and he's the main player in this team. But what people are ignoring is this rule isn't based on Scout being really good. What if this was a team like Yagao in JDG? What if it was JDG couldn't go, Monty, and now I can put rookie on JDG with Ruler and go to Worlds? Because then... Yep. You can argue, like the EG one, you might have made that team better and they might even win Worlds. And by the way, let's just add it to the pile of shit Riot has done in the past. So as well as the EG Danny one, which completely violated competitive integrity, I'm going to bring up my favourite one of all time. Remember when, Monty, they had a LAN tournament? A LAN tournament, bro. RJ45 cables. Not internet. Not a WAN, a LAN. It was called MSI in 2022. And it was held in South Korea. Are you ready, guys? It was won by a team not from South Korea who didn't go to South Korea, playing over the internet where everyone else had to manually put ping onto their computer to allow a team to remotely play from China and win a LAN in Korea. I still think, sadly, I never did a video. Maybe this will motivate me too. I still think that might be the most mental example of violation of competitive integrity maybe ever. Because what it showed is China is the emperor, fittingly, of League of Legends, and he has your clothes, and we're not allowed to see it. And we're just the guys going, look, he's naked. They're like, no, what are you talking about? That's a beautiful invisible suit he's wearing.
But here's the weird thing, Thorin. Like, with the Danny situation, it's clear that they didn't want to put like a shit game on stage in a stadium that they had sold people tickets for. I don't agree with that. I think competitive integrity trumps that, but that's their reason, okay? MSI, they needed the Chinese team for viewership because otherwise, you know, it's not their fault that the COVID lockdowns happened in China. Nobody was able to actually, that's not true. The reason why it happened was because they weren't able to re-enter the country after leaving.
They wouldn't have been able to play LPL afterwards is the implication.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been able to play LPL. And instead of delaying the LPL games, which by the way, wasn't possible because again, this was how the Asian games fucked everything.
Politics basically ruined all of this. Yeah, there's nothing we could do about it.
It was because they couldn't delay LPL because the Asian games existed and they couldn't delay LPL into the Asian games time because the Chinese teams needed to play in the Asian games. That's why all this happened, guys. It was actually the Asian games. It's coming back to me now. And so effectively, like because of the quarantine procedures for them going back into China, you know, and they weren't willing to say, well, we're not going to have this tournament without a Chinese team. Like they weren't willing to do that. Okay. That's another thing for viewership that they may have to do. Someone please explain to me how one of 4 Chinese teams who isn't even a favorite for this tournament, having a substitute player and maybe having a disappointing performance is horrible for Worlds. Explain to me that one. What is this some sort of like giant business loss that I'm not getting? Like this is the least impactful of all of these other times that it could have been to have just follow your own fucking rules for once. What is the point of the rule book? What is the point of emergency subs? I don't understand. This is a scenario that needs to be sorted out by EDG, LNG, and Scout. And
by the way, this is even worse because of the Riot circuit, Monty. If this was the major in Counter-Strike, which back in the day was just a qualifier, got you into the major, it wouldn't be as egregious to have a player who's not on your team and not registered for the tournament play. That would be reasonable. The whole point of the league circuit is you only get access to Worlds based on what you did the whole year. So why would you then let a player who wasn't on that team qualify? And as I said, in this case, because it's such an egregious one, he might yet fuck around like DRX and win Worlds for God's sake. Well, how stupid would that be? That would be so fucking stupid. By the way, try to explain that in history. How did you get win on fucking... I didn't know he was on LNG. He never was. No, but he used to be like a shot. No, he just played in that tournament and won it. Like, what can even be? What are we even talking about anymore?
Right.
It's nonsense. By the way, they don't just let in the NFL. Now, by the way, the NFL would be even more incentivized. You can get injured in real life. Imagine in the NFL, my quarterback gets injured and we're like, oh, Tom Brady's just going to step in. Like, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's also that the rules have just been applied so unevenly. So, for example, when Vietnam couldn't go to international events, was there any accommodation made for them to play from Vietnam? No, of course not.
Remember, Monty, when Upset had to go home because of a family emergency,
Rux and Hillesang?
They had to use that player, Bean, from Formatney Academy, who everyone gaslit you was awesome and should definitely join. By the way, how did this LEC career go again? Anyone still? Oh, you never mentioned his name again. Exactly. So imagine if instead, when Upset went out, they could have just gone back and picked, because let me think, that was the year, Monty, where G2 didn't go. Imagine if they'd just gone, oh, hey, Rekkles is playing. Oh, by the way, Fnatic's bringing Rekkles from G2. He's just going to play at Worlds now. Would that have been fair? It would be insanely in violation of. But you're right. Essentially, the minnows. I mean, in the context of the LCS, EG was a shark, weren't they? But in the international scene, they always just pivot to the larger force. If you're China, you get everything. If you're in the LCS, EG gets everything. Like that's the worst part. You're not only violating your own rules, you're doing it capriciously to benefit your partners, and the little guy gets fucked. Because the VCS one is the most egregious one ever. Dude, they couldn't attend international tournaments for like the majority of 2 years or something, man. And then later you were like, actually, China can just stay at home though, can't they? That'd be rude not to let them play.
And exactly the same reason too, because of COVID. Exactly the same reason. But also, I mean, there were other things like, I mean, Fnatic obviously has done a bunch of shenanigans over the years with like emergency substitute. Remember Wonder also? I mean,
sure.
Again, I keep asking myself, what is the purpose of emergency substitutes if at the end of the day you can just sign any uncontracted player that you want that isn't on your roster? Like, what is a roster lock? What the fuck is a roster lock? Somebody fucking tell me what a roster lock is, because it has no meaning in any of these contexts with Riot. And everything is an emergency. Everything is an emergency. Like, I don't understand how this issue that has been brewing for months and months and months, because there are claims from EDG that Scout knew this after spring split, that he couldn't, that the travel ban was there. So like, how is this an emergency?
Here's my obvious joke. Being as Monty, the SoftBank Hawks already have a whole bunch of Koreans. They should just tell Dasher, unfortunately, you're about to have problems preventing you attending the event. Welcome, BDD. You're now playing in the SoftBank Hall. Like, why not? He's not going to be at Worlds. Let's bring him in. If we're violating the rules, let everyone violate the rules. Go for it. So let's all make super teams.
Everybody has a super teams. Yeah,
let's just do it. Let's make it all. You know, Ruler. I tell you what, Monty. I'm starting to feel like maybe, you know what? Maybe Goomer's not playing that well at the moment. Hey, Ruler, you want to come to T1 and fuck around and win Worlds, mate?
Hey, Yun, you want to get replaced by Ruler?
I know, it's mental in it. It's so mental in it. In fact, logically, TL, remember, TL is a Korean team, Monty. They should just kick APA and Yon and sign Rookie and Ruler and just fucking win Worlds. By the way, with those carries and their macro, they might actually win Worlds, by the way. That's how stupid this rule is. Also, who the fuck wouldn't want to watch that? That would be straight fire. I can't lie. That would be fucking mega, man.
Right. But I just find it so interesting that the fans' reaction to this is like, oh, well, now we get to watch Yagao. Why can't I watch Rookie with LNG? It's like, what is the point of Worlds qualification if we can just mix and match teams going into international events? What's the point of the rules? What's the point of roster locks? What's the point of competitive integrity? Like, that shouldn't be the takeaway here. The takeaway should be, how the fuck can teams change their rosters a month after roster lock for an issue that must have been known to at least some of the parties involved for months and months and months and months and months? Like, this isn't an emergency. It's categorically not an emergency. What? And there's just no time to get to the bottom of it. So Riot's probably like, well, we don't have, they're not going to send fucking investigators to China or like hire a Chinese law firm to deal with this. Partially because I don't think they can, because Tencent would probably not even allow them to do that. Because Tencent doesn't want Riot HQ, digging around in China. God knows what they find. They might find out Shear's real age accidentally. But like this whole thing is just fucking ridiculous.
By the way, someone please take the classic poster for the film from the 80s with Tom Hanks, Big, where it's him with that like fucking machine that he goes and plays at the great whatever it was called. Make that, but it's shit, and it's like Big, because the joke is I want to be a real grown up playing the LPL and everything. Like, step right up, sure. It's like it's the same plot in it. It's fucking ridiculous, mate.
Outrageous.
Also, the other joke is, what if instead, you know what, at this point, LNG, almost to flaunt how shit these rules are, should actually just fuck with them, Monty. Like, they should bring the Shy and have him play mid lane. Why not? Who's going to stop you? You can do whatever you want now, mate. It's madness.
He's the wonder of this year, just the uncontracted player who just rocks up at Worlds. I just don't understand that. I don't understand like who is making these decisions, why we write rule books in the first place, why nobody. I'm maybe I'm just the boomer yelling at clouds. I care about this stuff because I care about the history of the esport and the competitive integrity. But the fans don't seem to care, which is wild. Because I guarantee you, in any traditional sport, if this was happening, if a team went to playoffs, people would lose their fucking minds. People lose their fucking minds if a team that didn't get into the NBA playoffs suddenly had a new starting center. Like, what? And by the way, that would be after the trade deadline, guys, which is effectively what they're doing. They're loaning players after a roster lock deadline, which is a trade deadline. And they're just allowing them to compete in the biggest tournament in the world. And that's fine, apparently.
It's mental, though. That's why low key. That's why actually the saddest thing is that it's Yagao and it won't matter. If it actually had been Rookie and they'd have won Worlds, it would have again just been like that, like the one where RNG won remotely. It would have been such egg on Riot's face. Like, it's so bad. Especially because the worst thing is, this is what sucks so much, Monty. This is the same Riot games that when it comes to solo queue are the ridiculous hall monitor stickler for rules, like banning Dom from core streams because he said he'll be polished your nails or whatever. Like, but then when it comes to actual real things like what players can play in the World Championship, they're just loosey goosey in the rules or whatever. Like, it's bollocks, mate. Like, doesn't even make sense.
I mean, they made up rules and said I violated them as well as an excuse to like kick me out of the LCS. Like they basically made up new rules and then proactively applied them to me after they were made up. So like we know that when it's convenient for them, they will apply their rules, even rules that didn't exist at the time, or they'll lie about it. But when it actually comes to it being very easy, them writing a fucking rule book, putting it out publicly, they won't enforce the rules that are in there. And I agree with you, Thor. And like, what's so egregious to me is the teams should be outraged about this. Like, especially because World's performance could really matter. Like if I'm a North American or European team and there could be a massive financial difference for my team in terms of sponsorships if I make it out of Swiss stage or not. Like if I make quarters, it could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars for me in new sponsors. So I would be pretty pissed if this situation wasn't being enforced the way it should be. And like, why am I getting penalized because these teams have all this drama? And again, in no way is Yagao an upgrade, guys. If we're literally just talking about Yagao's individual performance, it has been quite bad. But the meta is probably better at Worlds for Yagao as a player. I still don't think he's going to be great, and it is an obvious downgrade. But the concern is that this does make things much more abusable in the future. And as we know, when things can get abused, they do get abused because there's money and fame on the line. So you just can't allow it to happen, which is the purpose of having these rules in the first place. So I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And I don't get why the teams are not saying, well, you just have to use your fucking subs that you brought, just like all of us submitted our rosters and we would have to use those subs and just like we're shit out of luck. And that's just how it is. That makes sense to me. And I think that it's a pretty big, this is why you do not want Riot as a tournament operator, is because they can't make the shitty decisions like this. Like, it's not good for them to like have this scenario, but you just have to, for the sake of the competitive integrity and the fans' belief in you as a sport, you have to take this seriously. And this also just goes to show that Riot is running a marketing exercise and they're not running a sport, because if you care about competition, this can't be allowed to happen. So pretty garbage.
What's great is that one combined it all, though. It was, we were complaining about Riot, rule violations, and conflict of interest. And competitive integrity, sorry, which is like, we almost filled the whole bingo card on one topic.
I mean, it all just plays into itself, right? And, you know, there's also a possibility that Tencent is actually just strong-arming Riot on this. And maybe Riot disagrees, but the Chinese overlords are saying, no, you can't do this. So
it's even an area where it's obvious, right? This is where Riot also being owned by Tencent, who have an obvious like control exerted on them by the Chinese government, is a negative as well, Monty. Remember, Riot could just go, well, we don't care about any issue in China. We're an international company. We're Riot Global for America. But instead, because it's Chinese law, well, obviously that is God to fucking Tencent, isn't it? So they're not going to do shit about that. They have to prioritize it. They'll probably get shut down otherwise, mate.
Yep. Well, Thorin, we are going to be doing our Worlds preview episode at some point very soon. So I think we should probably switch to viewer questions, and then we will get another episode in before play-in starts, guys. Yeah. So you have a chance to hear about some of the teams and their performance, but obviously a lot to get to this week on a variety of topics like the JoJo and LCS sales and everything like that. Plus, we will have that 4 Horsemen coming up for you guys too about the LCS team sales in more depth and hear from a guest. So we'll take a quick break, guys. When we come back, we'll do some viewer questions.
Right, we're going to do the viewer question segment, which obviously we can potentially run through all of them because we had a shorter episode. We're going to do more world stuff like Monty said on the preview episode where we copy Cadril 10 years after we did it first and just do what he did because you're just a plebs who don't know. So anyway, if you don't know, obviously the viewer part is not literal. It's not people watching now asking questions. It's viewers in the more general sense who view and support our network. How do you support our network? By subscribing to our Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord. If you do so, a perk is, as well as supporting our work, which again is not funded by the Saudis, you gain access to a channel where you can ask questions of us.
Except for MBS, who is definitely a subscriber on our Discord, so he helps fund that way.
He's our substitute CEO.
With Riot bringing back a similar Swiss system for this Worlds, I feel like the knockout stage has a higher chance of having badly seeded matchups with this format rather than the old group format. Yes, it is known. Due to drastically different strengths of schedule and randomness of the draw. We saw this last year with Weibo drawing NRG despite being the worst of the 1 to 2 teams in Swiss. What do you think could be implemented to solve this while keeping the same format, since Riot probably won't change it? Well, you can't, is the answer, because there's not enough international competition. And it has, the Swiss system has problems at the majors and CS, even when there is a lot of international competition, and therefore a better way to seed things. Like, you just need to use GSL groups. You just need to use GSL groups. Like, just do what you do at the World Championship for Valorant, that other esport that you run, Riot, and you will fix Worlds. That's what you should do. But yeah, there's nothing that can be done with Swiss. Right? A question here is, should the higher placing teams be able to select their opponents rather than randomly drawing them? That would be better. That would be better if you could, if you had the highest seed. But how do you designate the highest seed? So, for example, who gets to pick first? LCK number 1 or LPL number 1? Maybe it's the region that last won Worlds or MSI, but even then, that's not a really great indication. There's always just going to be seeding problems. There always will be. So you should just move away from that format entirely. Swiss is terrible. It's terrible for this.
And also the other thing people forget with Swiss, it's not one detail that always gets missed is this, Monty. It's not even did you draw a bad team. The question is, when did you draw a bad team, Monty? Because here's the thing. Remember, this almost happened with shitty Team Liquid, with fucking Pioshik. They almost beat T1 because that was a BO1. Yep. But in a BO3, would they have beaten T1? They wouldn't have had a chance. So actually, even drawing the big team depends. In a BO1, you've got a way bigger chance of the upset. So I hate everything about Swiss. That's why I told everyone, you'd think because it's the CS format, I'm going to big it up, right? It's worse. Like, I don't know if it's actually worse than round robin groups. I think they fucking suck, because the worst thing about round robin groups is you can have people's tournament life determined on a game they're not playing with a team that's already eliminated that needs to win the game, which I hate. That's just a terrible incentive. But I agree. GSL's just a way better system. I would just do that already, mate.
And you do it with Valorant champions, so.
Another thing that I hate is if you just have double elim, it takes away a lot of these grievances, because at least once you get to the playoffs, it's not as big a deal where you're seeded in the bracket. The lower bracket sort of will auto-correct for you, won't it? So since you also don't have double elim, which there's nobody stopping you doing it. By the way, do you want to know what would actually tilt you off the face of the earth, bro? Is the amount of people, I've actually shown some of these on my Petty Grievances new series that I do, which is just me rocking everyone, like Thorin versus Reddit style on Twitter, basically. And you don't know how many times, Monty, when I've suggested on Twitter, even for like CSGO, that they have like a double elim bracket for the major playoffs, people just go, yeah, and then the major's going to take like 2 months to run. Because again, Monty, remember, everyone who thinks we're wrong, and this is a really satisfying thing, guys. Have you noticed how everyone who thinks we're wrong about formats has never watched a tournament with that format and thinks we're having an abstract discussion and we're inventing a format. That's probably the worst thing, because again, I'll just say, a little tournament called the International, it has way more games than the CS Major and League of Legends Worlds, and it's had double limb for like what? The entire time.
Yeah, the entire
time.
It's also run by Valve, so how could we know though? You know what's funny though? I never thought about
so
this
again,
before.
if you actually hate Swiss system, I don't think we can convince them, like you said, to fix the seeding. What we need is just the number one thing we all need to ask for is double a limb for playoffs. If they give us double a limb, I can take the seeding aspect. I can take it.
You know what's the actual mindfuck, Thorn, and I never thought of this before this point in time, is we have two companies. Each of them has a MOBA and a tac shooter, okay? But they refuse to run. Each of them runs double a limb in one of the genres, but not the other one, and we don't know why. Like, so for example, like if you're Riot, how could you look at TI and be like, nah, double limb doesn't work in MOBAs? And similarly, if you're Valve at this point, now that Valorant's been released, how could you look at it at Champions and the Valorant international tournaments and say, double limb doesn't work for textures? It's like, what the fuck is going on?
At least because, by the way, in all these tournaments, the amount of times that actually the lower bracket teams won is quite a lot now, bro. It's like more than you'd expect. Yeah, it's more than you'd expect.
Yeah. Which of the 5 Indiana Jones movies is your favorite?
I've only seen 3 of them, so I haven't even seen the last 2, so I can't even comment on those 2.
I've only seen 4 of them.
The problem is I haven't rewatched all of them recently. So I've told this to Monty already. I rewatched The Last Crusade because I thought that was my favorite recently, but didn't hold up that well. So it's going to be that or the first one. I mean, the weird thing we always mention on 4Players, for some bizarre reason, Richard just like holds a candle for the shittest one, which is Temple of Doom. I don't know why, because that's easily the most.
He loves short round. It's so fucking weird.
It's just whacking it. I know. Like that. I think that whole thing with that fucking kid in it's just fucking terrible, mate. But so to me, it's number 1 and number 3. I feel like probably number 1 if I had to really put my finger on it.
So I refuse to watch number 4 because why would I watch it? And the only reason I watched number 5 was because I was doing a review on Nerd Legion with Doa. Otherwise, I never would have watched number 5 either. It's definitely not number 5.
Didn't you say that number 5 wasn't as bad as you thought, though, or something? Or was that Doa's take, maybe?
Look, it's like a 5 out of 10. Okay. Like it's enough. Like, okay, but they do weird shit, like make him a sad alcoholic, which is like not his character. And like, I know it's cringe. I did like some of the stuff that they did with Archimedes and like ancient Greece and Syracuse, and that was pretty cool. But like, okay, so I actually am a giant sucker for like these like lost world, genres where you find these artifacts. So I like the Uncharted series. I like the new Tomb Raider games. I like Indiana Jones. I like the Man Who Would Be King movie. Like I fucking love this shit. Like Explorers and the Lost World stuff. I really enjoy it. Because of its ties to history, and I think it's really fun. So, I mean, I really like Indiana Jones as a concept, especially like the throwback to the 30s and 40s and the like the comic serials and everything like that. Like, I think it's very creative, and I think Indiana Jones is a great character. I think my favorite is still Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, the opening sequence in that is just so fucking good. Like, but Last Crusade's the second best one. I mean, they are simple like popcorn movies, but I think they're very well done. I don't understand Richard's fascination with Temple of Doom. I don't get it. Yeah. I find it funny that he likes it. I'm sure it's going to come up on 4Play at some point in time.
It's one of those weird idiosyncrasies, isn't it? Like, it's the only person in the world I've ever met where that would be the best one.
Temple of Doom.
Metal in it. I don't even get what the rival reason is, but it's all good. It's all good.
The GOAT Players Discussion episode of SI is probably my favorite one to date, and I find myself rewatching it every few months or so. Do you plan on revisiting the discussion anytime soon, especially since it's been 3.5 years? Probably. I mean, we could probably do that this offseason. I think it's probably time.
What would also work is we wouldn't have to do all the same ground. We could do it as like an addendum and ask what's changed or which players get added to the list, or are we taking anyone off who's now not as impressive anymore? I think we could do that, yeah. Because like views on that are mad. I think it has like 200k views or something. It's a pretty well received episode.
Yeah, I think also that for me, like probably Mako has taken over in the support role, and I think you could probably make some arguments in the jungle position at this point as well.
ADC will have changed because of Aruna winning, etc. Like Viper up there. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them changed. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's probably time to revisit that at this point in time, and we will have shows. We will have SI during the offseason, guys. So you don't have to worry about that. We'll keep doing it. Could T1 have won at least one LCK split this year with Pays Viper instead of Guma? I don't know if that's their biggest problem.
Replace ADC?
Yeah, replace Guma with Pays or Viper.
I don't think they would have won the split.
I don't think they would have.
Maybe they would have been slightly better, but I don't think they would win the split.
Yeah, it's not like Guma has been a terrible performer. I think it's just like, I mean, if the question is, could they have won by replacing Faker with Rookie? Like maybe. But I don't think that Guma's individual performance has been holding them back from a title.
For me, the most obvious two players you'd replace is surely jungle and mid. You know what I mean? Those are the two I feel like you could get a big upgrade.
Yeah. I mean, you need the shot calling, though. That's why even removing Faker is like problematic for T1. Like they unfortunately, this team is like, they're built on a foundation that I just don't know if you can plug and play players. Like I think you just have to blow up the roster at this point in time. All of it. Which Roman emperor had the best name, and why is it Pupinius? Yes, thank you, Butt Pounder 420. With Brazil banning Twitter, what will they do with all the unused vendettas? It's been great. The lack of Brazilians on Twitter has been great.
Yeah, the idea I actually wake up and it's like all Brazilian users banned from Twitter. Like, okay, I must be running the simulation. I'm back in control again, boys. Patriots back in control.
Can we also get rid of the French next? That's my next request.
And we just only ban T1 stands. Because remember, Monty, since in Korea you have to use your social ID, we could actually identify who T1 fans are. And everyone else can be accessed to the internet, but only T1 stands are banned. That's the other option I have.
And by the way, if we can do this, Elon Musk, I'm asking you, can I, when Brazil comes back, because they will, can I please have a feature where I can turn off Brazilian accounts?
That would actually be legit.
So can I please have that? Here's a proposal for you. What do you think about splitting LFN subscriber questions from SI into its own weekly show? You could have question channels that last longer, organized around topics: League, Counter-Strike, sports, TV and film, philosophy. Yeah, I mean, we probably should do that if we're being honest.
I mean, put it this way, here's the thing. If we do that, unless you specifically want it, like he says, like one about League or one about CS, the obvious one to me is, I think the most popular obvious one, Monty, would just be its own question and answer show with me, you and Richard.
Yeah.
About anything, could be movie, just to generalize. I think that would be a very popular AMA type show, if you know what I mean, Because Richard always has his own angle and his own weird things here. So I feel like the three of us together would be the ultimate, general AMA type thing. So that might be doable. That's doable. I'd be up for that.
Yeah, I'd be up for it too. Look, guys, the fact of this is that LFN, obviously, like, you guys see us continue to add shows, and like the business end of LFN is constantly doing more business, but it's still kind of scuffed, guys, because like I don't have all the time in the world to deal with it. So this is one of those things that we will definitely be reevaluating during the off season, especially because we've had the addition of so many shows now, and like we're a year deep into the culture content. So like we'll be revisiting our strategy in the off season. Like, we really appreciate your support on Discord, but I think you are right. There are better ways we can do things. We just haven't had the time when all of us are dealing with, I mean, Thorin and I each do like 6+ podcasts a week, plus dealing with our own content, plus dealing with, aspects of the business side of things. So it's been pretty tough to like change some of this stuff and really think about it in the middle of the season. But that is a good idea, and we will probably do this. Roast me if you think this is a horrible take. Well, that was going to happen anyway. But what do you think about contextualizing Faker versus Chovy as Michael Jordan versus LeBron? Well, this won't be a question for me because I don't know enough about basketball.
It's just so boring. Do you know why it's a shit question, Monty? Because it would imply I think LeBron is the main contender for the GOAT of basketball. That's why it's a trash question. The only person, are you ready? I'll do this specifically for you, Monty, not for this fan. Do you want to know the wackest thing about the idea that we're all the consensus now is that the only two people in the basketball GOAT discussion are Michael Jordan and LeBron? It's not even an organic discussion, Monty.
No, it's forced by the NBA.
When Kobe Bryant played, they used to say when he was in the finals, all the commentators said he's the best player in the NBA. Now they retcon it that LeBron was the best every year. Secondly, this is actually mental, mate. LeBron's company that he works with is called Clutch Sports, and his agent and a bunch of his childhood friends are mega influential in the industry. And it's not an exaggeration, Monty. Via business opportunities they give to other people, including talking heads, they unironically have those people on those shows in their back pocket. And that's why that topic is brought up every week. Essentially, it's an astroturfed topic. Now, look, don't get me wrong. Once you get the ball rolling, obviously all of the Gen Alpha that never saw Kobe and Laurie Bird, they all agree with it and go, oh, yeah, well, I guess the guy now who's the number one must be there. And if he's top of the score. So the problem with that topic is this, bro. I'll answer the actual real fans question. No, I don't think that's a very good characterization because I don't even think LeBron is a top 5 basketball player. Whereas I think, and I've said this before, if greatest has to include resume for team success, then Faker's the greatest. But the best of all time, who was the best player? I think rookie from seeing him play. So that's how I contrast it. I would say it's actually a more interesting one if you wanted to do this, Monty. Here's the better analogy. How about Peyton Manning could be the best quarterback to ever play, but the greatest by resume is Tom Brady? That's a much better contrast, I think, personally.
Sure.
There you go. There you go.
How would you ideally optimize the NFL season/playoff structure? I don't think you can fix it. The problem with the NFL is like there's just...
I've got an idea, but it's a bit out there for you.
All right, I want to hear it.
Right. Yeah. My idea goes like this. We first have to break one paradigm. The paradigm goes like this. The purpose of the NFL is to reduce harm from physical injury as much as possible. You've missed the whole point. You don't understand American football. An actual feature, not a bug, of American football is contact. You know, by the way, Monty, It could have been flag football from day one, bro. You never had to have anyone ever get tackled. But the whole genius of the NFL, if you ever listen to people like Ray Lewis says it the best way, Monty. Defense in the NFL is about men being accountable to men and saying, I'm not going to let you physically move down the field past my men. That is war, by the way. That is why it's the ultimate proxy for war. And why, in a fucked up way, you know this, Monty. You know how when you first get into a sport like UFC or NFL, you see the hit and you turn away. Bro, when you're 5 years deep, you want the replay. You want to see the fucking leg snap and then you want to see, and when you see that Ray Lewis clothesline and this motherfucker, like, it's the best shit ever because you understand, Monty, and this is the key difference. You understand that isn't a bunch of schoolgirls who are selling fucking Girl Scout cookies who were forced to play a sport. These people opted in to be paid millions to attack each other. So let's just have them go hog wild. So in the same way as I personally think the UFC should do what Pride used to do back in the day and allow all steroids because it's a sport where you're smashing each other's brains in. Let's all become freak fucking Hulk versus like whatever that abomination level monsters like they used to have with Aubrey.
And then let's add cybernetics down the road.
Let's do all that
genetic
shit.
enhancement.
Yeah. So I'm going to go the other way. Here's what I'm going to do, Monty. Just like the UFC, where you know you are going to get hurt and injured. By the way, even in the NFL with the rules, you're going to get hurt and injured. It's worth it for the payoff, right? So you ready for how I'm going to fix the NFL? We're going back to the old rules from the 80s, but we're just going to put the money up. Now, if you win the NFL, so it's all about trying to win and go hard. If you win the NFL, your team shares prize money of $50 million. Now let's see who wants to fucking tackle. Who wants to get out on that field and get me a first down, motherfucker? Exactly. Every playoff game you win, $10 million. Now, the point is, it's actually genius, Monty. Are you a poor kid from the ghetto who has no academic future? If you go in the NFL and you're really sick, you can make yourself rich. It's the American dream. What do you hate, America? If you don't like America, get the fuck out. I'm not an American, so I just like saying that anyway. And that's it. Part of that was a bit just abstract. But what would your actual? What would you fix for real though?
I think it's hard. Like, I would like to see probably something more like the NBA's like mid-season tournament that they're doing now, instead of just having the 17, them continuing to add regular season games.
For you, here's an idea. If you want, because obviously the problem in the NFL is you're not going to want too many extra games, right? Here's what you could do. You could do something like at week X, whoever's leading each of the divisions plays a mini tournament. How about that?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That'd be a cool one. Yeah, wouldn't it? Because also the reason that would be cool, Monty, is remember, it doesn't guarantee at the end of the season you're going to win your division, go to the Super Bowl. Maybe actually you only get that mid-season thing, but maybe it shows that there was a team in the first 6 weeks, as happened many times in the NFL, who's awesome. A bit like, in the LCS splits, you used to have that team that's leading on week 4, and then they're like barely in the playoffs on week 8, are they? Like, it actually even sort of show the season better than it currently does. Because I hate it when that happens. The team that starts like 7-1, and then the end like 7-8 or something. Like, what are you doing? Like I said, have to be 9, but all good.
I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's a digital series by the NFL called the N-IF, as in IF, the N-IF-L, where they try and project alternative courses of NFL history if certain pivotal events never occurred, like if Drew Brees never got hurt on the Chargers or the Tuck rule didn't happen. It's a cool concept.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Can you think of moments in league or other esports where if one thing went differently, you think it would have drastically changed the course of history? Oh, yeah. Like if score doesn't fail, that Baron Smite or Perks to Fanatics doesn't get blocked.
By the way, the obvious first one immediately is imagine if the Korean Exodus never happened.
Or Faker went to the LPL.
Like those are like the biggest game changes you can ever do. Yeah, those are enormous, mate.
Oh, we didn't actually even talk about it on the show. We should have talked about Def's retirement and the history of Def.
We can do that next week too, if you want.
Yeah, we can do it next week too. But we should talk about that because I mean, the context of his career is obviously amazing. And going back to the GOAT conversation, he's in the conversation for GOAT ADC at this point in time for sure. And he, what's interesting, Thorin, is he is the last of the Samsung players from that exodus to actually retire now. He's the 10th and final retired player.
Remember, last year in spring, he had like all the top stats in the league. Bro, that's 10 years deep. Like that, his longevity is actually unbelievable. Like, if you go, here's what I would challenge anyone to do who wants to hate on Deft. Go and find me the worst year of Deft that wasn't this year. And you will see what an insane flaw that guy's career was. Because I'll tell you what, even when his teams weren't good, he was always good. What a fucking amazing player. Yeah, we'll do that next week, though. We'll wax the Rickles. It's all good.
For the next episode, when you two get high watching,
technically, I did win him a Worlds. I did it really, but it just seems like that if you watch that video back in the day. I did sort of set it up.
Blessed him. You blessed him.
I did.
You blessed him. You blessed Zeka for the LCK.
Oh, but we didn't talk about that. We also didn't talk about that. Did we actually talk about that detail?
Yeah, we did.
Where they all claim that like I had like two versions planned, and it's like there's a whole conspiracy theory that I was actually like putting him down. So that was mental one in that whole thing. I was just sat back like, you know what's mad, Monty? I've actually ascended to the level. This is why it really is Thorin derangement syndrome, like Trump derangement syndrome. You know, the people who hate Trump for like valid reasons, like they don't like some of the shady things he did in business as a real estate mogul in New York, or they've heard stories about him being like a hedonist in terms of like celebrity culture and how he treated women. Like that would be a real reason. But you know, when you have a person who just hates him for any reason whatsoever, bro, I've got to that level. Like I did a tweet during last Worlds. Do you remember at the last Worlds where there was a desk where they did an all-female desk, but it was legit. It was Shock's host, Law analyst, because she's a massive KT fan. It was a KT game. You had Emily Rand, who already is one of the best analysts, and then the genius, because it was an LCK game, is you had Ji-Sun Park, who is the translator. And if you don't know Koreans, they all play Bloody League and they all know the game and like they know the matchups. So it wasn't even what people think, Monty. It wasn't like a fake diversity quota desk. They actually basically realized we could actually just do a real desk with like actual top talents, but all women. And it wasn't even like, hey, it's the women's desk. It's like, it just so happens it's all women. So I just took the picture and I just said on Twitter, all these people, you can tell, like live and breathe League. Like you can sense the enthusiasm on the screen. If you saw the replies to this tweet, Monty, you would lose faith in humanity. There's all tweets like, you misogynist piece of shit. So you had to make fun of women again. Oh, it's mental, mate. The replies will actually fry your brain, mate. At this point, I could actually just say like, happy birthday, so-and-so. I hope you have a lovely day. And they'd be like, you sarcastic piece of shit. You wanted to die in a fire. Like, I actually can't win at this point, mate. It's over. I used to get in trouble for what I used to say, Monty. Now I just get in trouble for anything they want. They just make it up. They just mad-lib what I said. It's all good.
For the next episode where you do get high watching esports content, can we get an exception for the next episode to get Thorin to watch vampires? So Thorin, the context of the context of I did not know this show existed. So I was on my stream and we were talking about like D-tier 90s kids shows, okay? And there was a
animated one way back in the day.
No. It's live actions. It is called Vanpire, V-A-N, like the van that you drive.
Never heard of it. Okay.
And I had never heard of it either, but we watched the first one, and it's about these teenagers who legit turn into cars at night, and they're car vampires, and the entire thing is just car puns. And the best part is that they have
look all right though. This actually looks like not bad. It looks like anime Transformers or something. Isn't it?
Yeah. It's like vampire Transformers. Okay, it's terrible, but you'll appreciate this. There is a guy who is like this weird hippie character who's based off of Van Helsing, except he's like a rock guy, so he's called Van Helsing, like HE''LL.
Yeah.
And people think no one knows who played this guy because he's wearing like this wig and like sunglasses. People think it's the bassist from The Doors.
Is that real?
Yes.
But as in, it's like a real urban legend that maybe secretly did it.
Bass from The Who. Sorry, from The Who.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean like the real? That's like a
John
really famous.
Entwistle.
Yeah, that was like a really famous guy, mate. Is that real?
So they think that John Entwistle is one of the characters in this show because he's never the actor is unknown who plays.
Oh, it's also because when I googled it, apparently some of the soundtrack was made by that guy. So I think that's why they think it. Right? Okay. I wonder if that's true because if people don't know, The Who was like a really famous British rock band from like the 60s and 70s.
Yes. Basically, like another theory is that it's Gary Oldman. But this show
this show looks like cancer, by the way. Like the other characters
are
called mortar vators. Like
it's literally all teenagers making bad car puns, and like it's terrible. Anyway, I watched it on my stream, but you watching this would probably be pretty funny. It's like outrageously bad. So shout out to my stream for making us watch that. It was very funny. My question here, though, is this. With Jojopyun out of C9 and Berserker as of recently, what are the options out there for C9 to now consider to upgrade at mid and ADC?
I mean, what's weird about that is, I don't know how you could upgrade at ADC. Who the fuck are you getting?
I mean, I don't think Berserker was good towards the end.
I mean, who can you get, though?
You could import another player.
Unless, like, Upset is coming. Who's better than Berserker in LCS? Like, actually, ADC is a pretty weak position. Like, I don't even know on that one. Who do you get for that one?
Yeah, I think Berserker looked really apathetic and like had fallen off quite a bit.
It's why the other take that's so weak, Monty, is all those people going, brilliant. Now Berserker can just go to LCK. Well, he's not joining the top team, you dickhead. They already didn't. I hope you understand this, guys. And I'm just going to say this to the Whippos of the world, right? We already barely respected LCS. There's not even Bjergsen and Doublelift anymore, boys. No one gives a fuck. Why Whipple's hands touching that Mickey Mouse trophy made him now think he's Caps? I have no idea, mate. These statements he's making on Twitter are fucking mental. It's like, bro, you are aware that's not an LEC title. Like, spoiler, Whippo, you've never won an LEC title except when you were carried by Rekkles and Caps. Sit the fuck down. You know nothing about being a champion. So I don't get even why people keep saying that, Monty. Like, Berserker's stock was really high, like a year ago, 2 years ago? It's got to be at its lowest now. Like, if he goes back to Korea, I'm sorry, he's going to be playing on, like, fucking, bro, like, be honest, man. It's not going to be someone good. Surely it's not going to be Katie Rolston now, is it? It's going to be Brion or fucking, like, I don't even think you get on Kwangdong Freaks, mate. I think it's going to be, like, fucking Fear X or something. You know what I mean? Like, what are you hoping for?
Right. I mean, he didn't get an offer from T1 to be promoted. Like, they didn't replace him with Guma, or like replace Guma with him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the future for this guy is.
I think for mid lane you could get some good ones because the obvious one you could always do is just import a European, can't you? There's loads of mid laners that are fucking good. Yeah, why not?
I think it's and by the way, like it depends on whether you like the real question. I know like Sven and Vulcan apparently don't like working well together, but Sven at least made you have some level of macro. So can you get Sven back? Would be a question.
And he looked like one of the best players on the Dignitas lineup. He was like one of the vaguely competent ones.
Yes.
I'll tell you, here's the move no one wants to hear. So I'm going to say it as usual, because that is my brand. Here's what I want to happen, Monty. Wait a minute. Whose music is that? Watch me. Perks is back in C9. Tell you what, bro, he's barely got anywhere he can go in LEC now. He did win when he was in mate, bring Perks back. Bring Perks back.
Actually, would be hype.
The drama alone would be amazing, wouldn't it? It'd be fucking sick, bro. Be sick. Bring him
Which
back.
character's got the worst ending? Tywin Lannister, Stannis Baratheon, or the Night King? I mean,
he means in the TV show here.
Yeah, my favorite character in Game of Thrones is Tywin, because I think he's the only one who actually understands what he should be doing, and understands the stakes of the political game, like has a sense of duty. I mean, Tywin definitely didn't deserve to die the way he did.
His ending isn't that bad, though, because think about it, right? His ending isn't something you could really foresee. Essentially, his one mistake, Monty, was because his whole ethos is about family, is believing my own family won't kill me. That was his naivety.
True.
Right? Whereas essentially, like in that moment, like actually Tyrion Lannister was sort of doing the, like, I wish I wasn't born thing and killed him. Right? The problem is the winner surely easily is Stannis Baratheon. Remember, in the show, he inexplicably sacrifices his own daughter to win a battle he loses and then just lets all his men die and then just is killed, not even on camera, for fuck's sake. Whereas like the Night King, you know what? It was shit the way he died and utterly pathetic, but at least the build-up was pretty epic. Like, they did fucking get some mileage on that. I think the Stannis Baratheon one is one of the most, if you know the book character, that's one of the most criminal, like, mistreatments of a character or betrayals I've ever seen. It's really bad. It's really bad.
After listening to the football call-in program 606 on Radio 5 Live, I assume this is a British thing, it appears to me that brain rot entertainment is part of every generation. Of course it is. Are sports call-in programs as bad in the US and around the world as they are in the UK? Yes.
The problem is, those sorts of shows, in the UK, they do this. So I imagine it's similar in America, Monty. The actual premise of the type of sports calling show he's talking about is they actually celebrate the idea, not that they curate really amazing questions and guys, but it's literally the average pleb. It's supposed to just really be like a bloke in a van, like, hey, I'm not hearing you guys just talking shit about Martin. It's that sort of politics. Hey, we're going to get better next year. It's like the most brain dead. So I don't know if it's like that in America, but it's almost by design, like for peons, basically. Yeah.
Hotline League, greatest LOL podcast as well. Why do LOL players?
Hotline League isn't even as good it could be because Travis is too scared to let the good guests on. Actually could be what's so dumb about that show is it could be a really spicy show with excellent drama, and then Travis is too scared there'll be some drama, so he makes it boring. But enough about his entire approach to the LCS. That was an alright joke. Wasn't even that good a joke, that one. Whatever, we'll let that one go. It's all good.
Why do LoL players and teams as a whole not value IGLs? In CS, teams place a premium on players like Kerrigan, Snappy, etc., despite their poor mechanical ability and fragging capabilities. However, in LoL, players are cut if their mechanics are bad despite having good calling. Well, yeah, I mean, Barrel's a great example of this, right?
Yep.
Another trend I've noticed is the lack of role swapping to maintain a caller. Surely Faker would potentially be a successful role swap to jungle support. I think so as well, just to keep him as captain. Also, I'm surprised someone like Hyde didn't just stay the C9 support or remain as the captain when they upgraded their top jungle and mid. No, I think this is I agree. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities here. And I do think that very good IGLs are undervalued. But also, like, to be fair to Counter-Strike, it has significantly longer longevity than League of Legends does. Like, they have an extra decade plus of competition to understand these things. I think we are only starting to understand now, through players like Barrel and Faker, how important this aspect of the game is.
We have an aspect I can give a perfect contrast with here between Counter-Strike, if you're a modern day CS fan, which is the player who just joined Astralis now, Cadian. When he was on Heroic the last 2 or 3 years, one of the things they were the best in the world at, Monty, was not on T-side calling, but on CT side, when you have to make a rotation based on where the enemy's going. It was clear that Cadian got to make the calls, and no one argued or discussed. They just did what he said. So basically, if he said, Monty, like, everyone rotate off A to B now, they wouldn't stop it and they would just instantly do it. And so because all 5 players instantly did it, they had amazing reactive ability because one mind had the vision to know to do this call. Now, the reason that I bring that up is because that is the antithesis of what even really smart people in League, like Kelsey Moser and Veteran, and all those people told me for years, which is they thought, because this was the early way it was done, shot calling, you remember, Monty, in League, which is it was like a discussion. It was like, hey, can we do this? Right, let's do Baron. Yeah, go for it now. And it was almost like a fucking a round table. Like, should we do it? Well, the flaw of that, Monty, is what I just described, the Cadian approach will nearly always beat the round table approach because I'm instantly reacting to one plan. You're actually having a fucking parliamentary stalemate of maybe we should back off. No, I think we go in you're never you can still beat me sometimes, but that's such a bad strategy.
This is what I talked about with the Cloud9 issues last week, which is why you can never actually diagnose the problem if you have this joint shot calling, because you have to hold somebody responsible for the decision, and that's the only way to actually improve. Which is what I think. That's my theory as to what one of the problems with Cloud9 is. You guys can look at the way I described that last week. But I also think that this will be an interesting angle. So one of the things that happened was because Faker was so good in like 2013, 2014 that they started to remove carry potential from mid lane, and they started to like give more gold to supports and junglers and change the way that they function in the game to make them individually more impactful. If they had not done this, guys, Faker could probably transition to support and not be as good mechanically while they get Chovy in mid lane and then have great shot calling. So in a way, like the way that Riot balanced the game by trying to give equal agency and equal power to all roles has actually created a scenario where IGLs are less valuable.
You know something funny, Monty? This is where, again, all you had to do was look down the hall at the other MOBA. Do you know one of the most famous things about Dota is when you get really old, you just become the supportive roles and eventually the captain. Like, you go literally from a carry to one day you're just the guy with no farm who's just the support with like a bot, basically, with wards. Like, that's actually the traditional route in Dota. So I agree. It should have been viable. Because, by the way, if you think about it, the worst thing about this not being a thing, Monty, is, as they point out, where not only does it tank the careers of our greatest ever thinkers, but it ruins people being on the same team. Imagine if Faker is now the jungler of T1 and Perks is the support of fucking EG2, and then fucking High is still on Cloud9 as their jungler, and fucking Afro moves this. You know what I mean? Like, you could have gone, dude, you could have had some of these people could be playing today and they could be just iconic with that one team, couldn't they? It'd be amazing. I agree.
Since you mentioned him in the past, can you tell any stories or anecdotes you've heard about Riot Magus and his impact on LoL esports? He's the single worst part. He's the single worst part.
This is Monty's secret nemesis that you guys don't know about. Like, he's actually the guy who's been low-key fucking with Monty the whole time behind the scenes. So he's the single worst person in all of esports. Single worst. I love it.
That's it. Any problem, it has been his doing, effectively. He's a piece of shit.
But is there any good stories? Do you have like a good anecdote or a story to illustrate as much?
I mean, he was the one who said the shit to Doa about the gravitas.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. What I love about that to this day is there still isn't a better call than the Faker ZVZ call from 2013. Like, that is still the most iconic call and probably the best call. Because, by the way, it's also actually underratedly a really good technical call, Monty. Not only in the moment, and no one can tell in the moment what activities someone doing in season 3, bro. But you also think about how great his frame, like the moves, look at the thing, like he actually fucking nailed the whole thing. He killed it. And the idea, you listen to that, the greatest call ever, and go, you're not really cut out for the big time, though. Like, get me out. Meanwhile, then they're like, and then here is Kobe.
He's also responsible for all of the, like, we should be like pro sports bullshit that they had. Because did he ever work for a traditional sports league? No, just a fan. That was his logic. No, he's terrible.
Love it.
Does versatility of subject matter and style factor in when you consider how good a writer is? Need a writer to be able to do it all? Novels, short stories, essays? No, obviously not. Even if a writer has a distinct style and usually writes a certain kind of book and is one of the best in the world, can you weigh that against an author who has written great things in varied genres? I mean, I think I don't really know. Like, you can be a specialist. I don't really understand the question.
That's what I don't get about it. Is everyone in Gen Alpha's brain broken? That the only discussions you can have is who is the GOAT? Like, it's not even appropriate to have who is the GOAT about authors. Like, just do you like the book or not? Because here's what's weird.
Shakespeare, but
here's what's weird is that he's doing that thing where it's like there is a distinction between, like, do I like your songs and how good are you as a songwriter? See what's different about those two? I'll give you the obvious example. I have known some people who were really cringe because they were massive fans of the band Nirvana that we all liked in the 90s. And because what they mean, Monty, is I really like the feeling I get from Kurt Cobain's lyrics and how catchy the songs are. They will say dumbass shit like, for me, Kurt Cobain's the 5th best guitarist of all time. And you're like, bro, there's about like 100 session guitarists would
can't even play guitar.
So the point is, and if anything, they were doing a punk aesthetic with grunge, weren't they, as well? Yeah. So, like, if anything, the whole premise is, if you mean write it in the terms of technical ability, then yeah, it probably should be based on like what you like. By the way, it's probably like Nabokov or something, you know. But if you mean write it in terms of you like the books, then I don't think you even have to be that talented. I think you just have to tell a great story, you know.
I mean, I do think it's just interesting to think about people's different, like, I'm not a huge David Foster Wallace fan in terms of his novels, but I think his actual like sports journalism is super fucking interesting. Like, I actually prefer him as like a tennis writer as opposed to a novelist. But he's just really good. So there is versatility, but I mean, poetry and novels are very different genres. So What distinguishes an effective interviewer from an ineffective one? What differentiates a competent interviewee from an adequate one? Well, this is a question for you.
So what distinguishes an interviewer?
Effective interviewer from an ineffective one.
The reason these questions are so weird, bro, aren't they like they're more effective? Like, you know what a weird question that is? I think what he means is this. I would say a bad interviewer can only accidentally get a good interview if essentially the other person does all the heavy lifting and just sort of makes up for the... Like, there's some people like Perks, for example, who are just brilliant at talking. So if you let them talk, you'll get a good interview anyway. A great interviewer is actually found in the episodes where it should be shit. So I would say if you go watch the Crackdown episode where we have Larson on or Abadage, and these motherfuckers are giving one-word answers and not talking, so I have to go like God mode and just like stimulate and provoke them 24/7 and make outrageous statements about teammates, because it was the only way to draw like actually interesting shit out of them. So I would say it's only really when you're in the trenches of a bad interview and you can turn it into sort of like a mediocre or a slightly good one. That's like that'll show you the skill of the interviewer, in my opinion. Like, what can you do with very little, basically?
What makes something prestigious? I mean, it's the packaging, right? Like, you have to have it's the product that makes it prestigious. And that's why it's so important. This is why when I talk about things like the LEC, due to the budget cuts, like slipping away in terms of, you know, the product and its viewership, is that when when you start to perceive that something is less prestigious, it becomes less important. So the prestige is all about the pomp and circumstance surrounding it. It's bullshit, right? It's bullshit, but it's effective bullshit. Do you have any thoughts on what makes something prestigious?
I mean, one of the main things, because I've thought about this in Counter-Strike, where I labeled Katowice, Cologne in the majors, the prestige events, is it's also that we all agree it has elevated status as a consensus. So crucially, the reason those events are always the biggest in Counter-Strike, whether like Cologne and Katowice are majors or not, is the players care about that more than another tournament. Like, but it's weird, that esports World Cup, Monty, has more prize money, but no player cares about it. Like, they care about winning Katowice and going up those stairs in the spore deck or being in the Lanxess in Cologne. So I think also history is a part of it, tradition, what status it has socially. I even think, is it aspirational is a big deal, right? It's why I will always acknowledge, even though I think MSI now is a way better tournament than Worlds, obviously Worlds is more prestigious, because here's the difference, Monty. Sure. Every player will live and die to win Worlds. Winning MSI is very good, but it's not the same, is it? Like, we all know, Knight and Trophy can't turn around and go, hey, Faker, check out my MSI. No, that doesn't work. But I tell you what, if they'd have won Worlds, they could go, hey, Faker, I just won Worlds. Like, that's different, you know?
I mean, part of it, though, is that the prestige of MSI has been sabotaged by Riot because of the branding, and this just goes to show how prestige works. Worlds sounds better to win than mid-season invitational. The name of that tournament is so fucking awful. Like, if you actually named it something that sounded prestigious, it would have more prestige. That's how this works, right? It was the format that was shit for a long time. And even though the format is better now, you need to get rid of the garbage name that it has and actually make it something sound cool. Like, for example, even though it's not as prestigious, Demacia Cup sounds way more prestigious than mid-season invitational. Like, I don't understand how you come up with such a shit name for something. What is your favorite UFC weight class for each of you, and why? Well, I don't really watch UFC, but I can talk about kickboxing. For me,
when you watch Muay Thai, what do you like in Muay Thai? What's the best?
Yeah,
do you like
with
the little
Muay Thai,
guys, like the bigger? What do you like?
So heavyweight is pretty bullshit in Muay Thai. Like, I think a lot of people, so part of this is true because the best Muay Thai fighters are Thai, and Thai people tend to be smaller.
Oh, of course,
But like the best Muay Thai weight classes, also because of the way that the sport works, speed and flexibility are very important. And so honestly, like, I think the best Muay Thai fights happen at like 145 to 155 pounds. Like, those are actually the really sick fights. You know, it's not the same amount of power, but in terms of the beauty of the sport and getting the best athletes who are the best at the sport in there, that's really like what you want. The heavyweight fights are weird in Muay Thai. They're not very fun to watch, in my opinion.
I mean, a similar thing, which is I actually think heavyweight is far and away the worst weight class in MMA, because first of all, it's too heavy. Like, it's people who are like 250 pounds. So the skill is obviously reduced, the speed. So, by the way, look, I get in the same way as boxing used to have this, it has great knockout potential, because you can imagine how hard the guys are hitting, and obviously they're not as fast dodging. But I actually think the UFC has proven that actually it's in the middle, isn't it? Like, you want things like middleweight, or like welterweight.
That's the jam for sure.
I think like heavyweight even sometimes sometimes go slightly too far because you can do the same thing in MMA, Monty. You can come in at the light heavyweight, but then you just pump yourself up after the weigh-in and get to like 230 kilograms. So I think that'll just too much. So for me, like the middle one's basically the best because it's the best mixture of skill, knockout, but also talent. Jiu-jitsu works better when you're smaller. Yeah, I'll go in the middle.
And you also just have to remember that when I talk about 155 pounds, those guys probably weigh 175 pounds really, but they've cut a bunch of water weight and they've been cutting fat percentage for the fight. So like normally these guys are probably, 6 feet, 175 or so. And you like cut down to 160. So you basically just have all of that muscle and none of the normal body fat that you have for that fight. And obviously you gain that water weight back right before the fight.
By the way, it even turned out, this is one thing the UFC didn't think about, but because it took the UFC, by the way, for many years was very hesitant to put in the smaller weight classes. And the joke is, not only did they do it, but some of them are very successful now. And one of the reasons why is actually obvious. Like you're saying about Muay Thai, if you understand the history of combat sports, spoiler, all the great fucking Mexican fighters are small weights, obviously. And that is one of the best countries, that and Cuba, so got to be insane for producing boxers. Like, come on, bro. So as you can imagine, they have amazing fighters at the lower weight classes now in the UFC.
Yeah. And if you care about Muay Thai and you're watching one championship and you see all the like Thai legends and they have 300 fights there, I mean, these guys are fucking amazing to watch. But they also weigh 140 pounds.
Sure.
Right? What is your favorite ability / kit in a champion league? We've offered this. We've talked about this a lot before. Like I really like Thresh and Lee Sin. I think they're just like constantly good to watch. Great playmaking champions. Like have a good balance of abilities in the kit. I like Azir a lot too.
Even though
Ezreal.
Normally, I'm not going to do the kit one because I've done it a million times, like Thresh, fucking Lee Sin, Pike. But I will say my favorite ability, just because of how stupid it is, is actually the Janna W, where you just send that bird at them and they slow down for a second or whatever. Like, that is so fucking stupid, whatever that is. Like, but I think that's the one I'm remembering. That one is just, I don't even know what it's supposed to be. Like, remember, you're making all this, you've got robots in there in the fight. Remember, the law is always a train wreck. In this game.
They just took
fly to the
they just took that and now birds are flashbangs in Valorant. So it's just throwing birds that do random things to people. I mean, I love Blitz Hook as an ability. Like Blitz Hook is always entertaining. I have watched very few movies in my lifetime. If you could recommend to me 5 films that would give me the best exposure to what the medium has to offer, what would you pick? Just watch Foreplay, dude. But yeah,
we can do a few. If we're only doing 5, so just give him 5 that we have to imagine he's never watched films before. What 5 movies? Because what we'll do is you're going to be good for this. We'll make it like stuff like Jurassic Park that's easy entry. We're not going to give him like Stalker by Tarkovsky or something. Are we? Like we'll make it like some shit he's definitely going to enjoy, right?
Well, I think Casablanca as like a classic film is like way up there too. It's from the 40s. We're going to be doing that on Foreplay, during this current arc that we're on right now. But to just get a fundamental grasp of like historic cinema, I think Casablanca is way up there. If you want Jurassic Park, if you want just like a standard, it contains a lot of important cultural references for sure that you probably want to understand. What else would you put in there?
I mean, I'm going to go with a mixture of just really good films he'll enjoy, but also ones that inform you about history. So I'll give you an obvious one we already did on Foreplay. How about Chinatown? It's a Roman Polanski film. It's an old school film. It's Jack Nicholson. And it's just a really great film noir. Like, I think you can't go wrong with that. By the way, you'll almost certainly enjoy it. It's really good. And the beauty is, if you know film noir, you'll really like it. And if you don't, it's just one of the best. It might even be the best, right? That's got to be up there. What about, I tell you what, it's not as famous, but I personally think the best twist movie ever is The Usual Suspects. Don't say what the twist is, but I think that is a movie anyone can enjoy. Just go in without knowing anything. It's just, and what an amazing cast that film has as well, mate. Fucking banger cast. Gabriel Byrne, fucking Benicio del Toro, Kevin Smith. It's a mega cast. That's a fucking banger movie. Who else? Give me a couple more. What else would you go with?
I mean, what are there any like more contemporary films?
I mean, if you want a more recent one, what's more recent that was good?
I mean, there's some more like niche independent films, but I'm not sure they're good for this question.
I mean, look, we did the recent Denis Villeneuve arc. He's a massive guy right now. I would go watch something like Arrival. That's a pretty palatable one, I think, for anyone to watch.
That's a good one.
If you like any sci-fi film, you're almost certainly going to like it. I think there's a good one. Let me think. Is there anything else more contemporary we could do? You know what? Maybe we'll give him one foreign language film, but we'll make it something good. Like, what could he actually appreciate that could be foreign language here, though? Maybe
probably not Curacao.
I would say maybe go with like the first Infernal Affairs, the one they copied for The Departed. Yeah. That's a really great movie. Great. And even though it's a foreign language, you have to read the subtitles. It's just a really good movie. It's essentially like a really great espionage type film. That's a good one too. Yeah, there we go. There's a few for you.
My brother and I have been listening to SI for many years now. I see it as an entertainment staple for us, something we can always look forward to. Do you guys have anything like that for yourselves? A thing that's been there for a significant portion of your life and it always brightens up your day when a new installment comes out?
I don't really have that much stuff like that. I don't know about you, Monty, but I find every sort of 5 to 10 years, I can sort of leave a lot of stuff from the past behind, and I've sort of outgrown it or changed or something, you know?
Yeah, I have an interesting answer to this. It's been canceled a million times, but Futurama, honestly, like the cartoon sitcom.
Still around now?
They started remaking it again. It's been canceled 4 times.
Fair enough, okay.
And it's still good. Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's, you know, they've ended that show like 4 different times, and they keep bringing it back, and like you always think, oh, it's not going to be good this time, but they keep getting the same writers and actors back, and it keeps being good. So like Futurama is still great, and like when they cancel it again, I'm fine with that ending, and when they bring it back, I'm like, is it going to be shit this time? And it's not. It's still very fun. So that's been something that's been kind of on and off my entire life, and it's just very weird that it keeps coming back. But I would say that is probably one of the things.
The sad thing is, like I say, a lot of the things have just changed. Like, for example, I used to be a massive viewer, as you can imagine, of Inside the NBA. But believe it or not, Monty, part of what spoiled that show for me is, 1, I worked for that company and literally was in their studios. 2, I also did that job after the fact. Like, remember, when I was watching it, Monty, it was in the 2000s. The problem is, I later got to do Inside the NBA myself, basically. So unfortunately, when you've done it yourself, you also see more flaws and where they're sort of waffling or saying some shite or whatever. So it's still a fun show, but I was not as like enthralled as I once was. I don't really have any running series though. I don't have anything I watched from back in the day like that. And in some, I mean, the joke for me is it is just esports, isn't it? Like I'm still doing exactly now, 23 years later or whatever. So it's gonna be Counter-Strike, I guess. I can't quit it, can I? I don't want
to. What have been the highest highs at any point in your lives?
I once did get some really pure cocaine.
Always a good time.
I realized I'm on Twitch here. I always forget about the TOS. I, in a Minecraft game, tried a white powder that really had a zing. Not a sponsor. Obviously, I was being facetious there, of course. I would never do cocaine officially under my given name, Duncan Shields, or Thorin for that matter. If I do that as a totally separate character, a bit like when Andy Kaufman had that like Tony whatever guy who was like
if you were to consider doing it, I would recommend making sure it's not fentanyl because shit's different.
Yeah, don't do it in America. Now, listen, the American shit, that's got again. If I was to do it, I heard the American shit's not that good anymore. So I'm talking about that really good, London esports awards cocaine, Monty. That's the shit I think of. And, they're giving away the inside secret again. Bloody hell, what have I done?
All right.
What is the real thing, though? For you, it's got to be something like having your child be born or something, right, Monty? Isn't there something like that was like a super good moment for you? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, look, there have been moments like that. In terms of my career, like doing my first Worlds in 2013 and doing like the hype train whistle bit and like really pulling it off, I think was very fun. So some of those moments for me. Also, when I did like the shirt rip thing at the Overwatch World Cup, like these moments that could go wrong or like are hard to execute and like nailing them. Honestly, like Renegades qualifying to the LCS, I will say that being a team owner, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it again, but the highs of being a team owner are fucking insane. That's why people do it. That's why people get addicted to the competition. Seeing my wife win Overwatch League was another one. Like I was really happy for her when London Spitfire won the first season of Overwatch League. So those have been some of the highest high points in my life, I would say.
Think about what I just answered 5 minutes ago. I used to be a big fan of the NBA, but I had no context in which I worked on camera. And I was a big fan of Inside the NBA. If you don't know, guys, guys, I went on Inside the NBA and roasted motherfucking Shaq to his face. He couldn't, on the moment, come up with a clever reply. And I sat there with my shit-eating grin, taking a high five from my friend in real life and esports, Richard Lewis, as I realized I've just trashed a Hall of Fame legend and he can't do shit about it. And I just sort of thought, you know what? Not bad life, is it? The way these Yanks are flying me out to Vegas to just dunk on their fucking icons of culture and sport. I remember thinking maybe the Americans aren't so bad. You know what? Maybe that war was okay after all.
For Thorin, I've heard you talking about the band The Moody Blues on past content. Which album or albums would you recommend starting with?
It's basically going to be the stuff they did at the end of the 60s and the early 70s. So I'll just quickly look up what those ones are called. I would say it's the stuff from Days of Future Past, so 1967, through to about the late 70s, so Octave in 1970. That's about 7 or 8 albums. They're all just really good. If you like them, it's the sort of music where, because each year they're doing it, it's like very similar types and like similar styles of composition. So if you like it, it's just a really great like folk rock style music, basically. It's very wholesome, actually, Monty. They're not talking about doing cocaine. I mean, even though the joke is they probably were doing loads of cocaine. They're just talking about cool things like love and charity, by the way, guys, fellowship, you know.
By the way, guys, the blues is just it's just cocaine. The whole thing is just cocaine, guys. It's cocaine all the way. The Blues Brothers, the Moody Blues, the blues genre, all of it is just cocaine. All of it. I enjoyed last week's discussion of League's dysfunctional lore. And it got me thinking about the inconsistencies in Overwatch lore. Strange that you could have characters who are lore-wise enemies on the same team. Yeah. I mean, it's just what it is. Would Overwatch have been a better game if it had taken the Counter-Strike framing of like T-side versus CT side for maps with in-lore Talon and Overwatch organizations? Nah, like we don't really care about, I don't care about like PvP lore in any case. It's just funny when it's extra bad, like in League of Legends. But I don't think it adds or detracts from the experience of playing Overwatch personally. I think like whatever. I don't care.
I've never understood why people care about lore, mate. I don't get it at all. Yeah. And that whole thing of like CT, the saddest thing about Overwatch is this. Another thing I did tell you at the beginning, Monty, is having all the game modes is going to kill this game. Like, because I already know from COD, they only care about search and destroy. Like the other ones always feel like forced and you just have to get good at. So I always thought they should have just picked one of the game modes and just stuck with that. Like, what was the one you wanted? The Assault one or something? What was the one you liked?
I mean, I liked Assault, but nobody else did. But like Payload.
Payload's probably the best one. By the way, the reason
I didn't like Control.
Payload actually had a unique component in all the major esports. I actually did think that was pretty cool too. Like I liked watching those French teams play on that back in the day, Rogue or whatever they were called.
Yeah. Also, like I don't even understand. Like this fundamentally doesn't work in my brain for this reason, which is like if I'm going to turn on my TV and I want a narrative experience, I will watch a great movie, right? In the same way where if I turn on my PC and I want a narrative experience, I'm going to turn on a narrative game. If I want a competitive experience, I'm going to turn on sports and I'm going to watch sports, and the lore is the players and the teams. So like for me, I don't need like Counter-Strike. It doesn't affect me that Counter-Strike doesn't have lore. In fact, I prefer it because it makes the entire focus on the teams and players. So I actually just don't even understand why people want lore in competitive experiences, because I don't get why you would want that. Because if I want that,
I want in League of Legends is a French woman who's very excellent at her job on the LEC. That's the only law I care about.
There you go. Right.
And I do want her in Counter-Strike. To be fair, I do want her to come. I wanted to do the Blast Paris Major, but for whatever reason, she chose to stay doing League. So I would like her to come over to CS. That's the only context, though, in which I want law in CS.
Yeah. So like, I just don't even understand the question. Like for me, it's not additive. I understand for a lot of people it is, but I don't get why. Okay, I'm not that one's weird. I don't know enough about cars. If you compare League of Legends players with sports cars, what players and cars would you choose? I don't know anything about cars. If League of Legends dies tomorrow and you have to pick a new esport to cover alongside Counter-Strike. So we can't pick Counter-Strike because I would pick Counter-Strike.
Okay.
What will it be and why? If I had to pick a new esport. Does it matter if I could make money? Because I just pick an RTS.
The problem I have is like, in theory, out of interest, I would pick Dota 2. But if you don't know, in Dota 2, I would never get a single view on any piece of content. It would all be downvoted to oblivion. Everyone the joke is, the players actually all want me to do fucking interviews. But I always tell them, like, I'll do the odd one, mate. But, like, it's like an opportunity cost loss for me, bro. It's not going to get any fucking views. So
let's pretend you could make
Dota.
money.
Yeah. I actually do genuinely really enjoy Dota. I also, by the way, I'm not the biggest fan, but if there was no Counter-Strike, Valorant's a pretty good second best. I'd still go and watch that game. Like, one of the cool things about Valorant, by the way, I've always said this about League, is the whole world plays it. You have these dope-ass Koreans and Chinese now. Like, if you don't know, guys, some of those guys from Overwatch play fucking Valorant. So if I couldn't have CS, I'd probably do Valorant, I think.
I would just pick one of the new RTSs that's coming out, probably, if like they could get big enough to sustain me. Like, I would love to do an RTS again, because that's where I started, and I really like 1v1 RTS. So whatever that
trying to keep
would
up
be.
on the Stormgate and all that shit and all those games.
I don't think Stormgate's doing that well, unfortunately.
But Battle Aces or something, the one where you have
Battle Aces, Stormgate, Immortal Gates of Pyre, these kind of games, one of them could get big enough.
I love how generic all these titles sound. Like Immortal Games at Gates of Pyre. Like, why are they so generic, the names? It's so whack, isn't it? I know.
What's interesting is actually Immortal Gates of Pyre is probably the most creative in terms of visuals. Like, they have like this weird, like, one of the factions is like an Aztec blood magic race.
Quite cool.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
By the way, that is also my favorite. It's not a big deal here, but that's my favorite political meme on the internet. It's the meme, Monty, where it's an actual Aztec priest on a pyramid holding up like a ripped out heart. And then as the conquistadors arrive, he goes, "Oh, great. The far right have arrived." That's my favorite meme on the internet. I love it. You figure out what it means, fans at home, but I think that's a fucking banger of a meme. I love it.
If you sat down today's Faker fans, how many would know who Nagne or Kuro
probably not
r/world?
Maybe like Kuro because it was rocks, but no one's going to know Nagne, surely. Come on.
I mean, they might know him from playing the Cassiopeia in that clip against Faker's Riven.
Oh,
but
right,
I mean, that's the problem with a lot of the Faker fans, is that they don't really realize, like, after 2014, for the next couple of years, like, there were some fucking weak mids that he had to play against. It's not like Nagne was a world beater. He wasn't the star of KT. When we talk about Kuro, like, Kuro was the worst player on the Tigers, and like, he was the problem most of the time. And so the fact that Faker had all these crazy mismatches made Faker look better than he was, because a lot of the really good mids were just not around. Like, probably maybe in that era, the best mid he was playing against was like Coco.
I actually did a piece of content 5 years ago for Deserto that they made into a documentary, Monty, like this. It was called Fakers Would Be Rivals. And what it was about how every year, basically, there was a new guy. It was like, as we say, it was like Rapid Star Ambition into like Ryu, into Pawn, into, like you say, Coco, into Nagne and Fly. And yeah, that's actually the real point. It's why, actually, what you really don't get if you're a Faker fan is you also lost out because Rookie wasn't there.
Yeah, Rookie nothing there was really a
It would have been so awesome for Faker in the same way as right now it is dope that Chovy and Knight have each other to battle against. That makes the story even doper, doesn't it? So I do think, sadly, we do miss that aspect.
Right. And like, because Rookie left, and because Dade left, and because Pawn left, like, a lot of those players that were his rivals in 2014 were no longer present. And then, I mean, Pawn beat him at MSI in 2015. But, a lot of these players like fell off. And I do think that part of the reason why some of these players fell off was that this was the first wave of players in China, and the teams probably weren't very good at integrating Korean players into those rosters or taking care of them. So you do wonder what would have happened if they had stayed in Korea in terms of the longevity of their careers.
Agreed.
So that's it. That was all our questions. Got through them all this week. We will let you guys know about the scheduling of the World's preview episode when we get that sorted out. So stay tuned. Obviously, join our Discord and follow us on social media, and you will get that information. So we will see you guys next week.